wildlife is concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
And one here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. As an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the magpie, which is much bigger, every springtime, the folk in this...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It is 3 minutes past 6 and it's Friday, ladies and gentlemen. We have reached Friday, the 11th of July, and it has been quite a week, I have to say. Not least because here at Talk headquarters, we had a little bit of a power outage just the other day, and we had to synchronise our watches and figure out what to do about it. And we suddenly ended up just going, I don't know, we'll just invade Times Radio for a bit, and we'll nick one of their studios and we'll put out a drive show with me and Jeremy Carl, with a bit of help from Peter Cole and Kevin O'Sullivan. We won't take any calls if we can't. We won't share any clips because we can't. We won't take any voice notes because we can't. And we won't be able to get anybody in the studio because it's not big enough. So we just had to carry on. It was like old-fashioned radio from the 1950s. It was great. Glorious, in fact, in many ways. And bizarrely, the numbers actually went up. So we had more people listening when we all went horribly, disastrously wrong than we do normally. Apart from, of course, on this show, where the numbers continue to grow exponentially. So thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you very much indeed for joining in. I keep running into people in the street thanking me for what we're doing. And we really do appreciate that, honestly. And we are doing an awful lot. One of the things that really annoys me is the way that we are supposedly fed absolute and utter BS by this government. And we're supposed to take it. This morning, for example, keep reading stories about how Keir Starmer's launched this great new deal to stop the migrants coming. It's called One In, One Out. Well, it's not bloody 1 in, 1 out, is it? It's 17 in and 1 out, and it's probably 17 in and none out, and it'll probably end up with being 50,000 in and none out, just like it was the year before this. So we've got a problem in this media world in which we inhabit, where nobody wants to tell the truth. I watched Robert Peston last night on ITV News, calling it 1 in, 1 out, with his torturous kind of... I'm very intelligent, so I'm just going to take a really long time to explain it to you. And of quite frankly, the bloke should be put away somewhere in a safe haven, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He talks absolute BS, and he doesn't bring anything to the party. Front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning. Sorry, Charlie Rowley's here. Sorry, Charlie, I'm just having a bit of a moment. And Macron's blaming Brexit lies for the migrant crisis, which is not really very clever. On the front page of the Sun, we've got there a migrant deal as 100 plus get to Britain, because of course yesterday, even as the deal was being done to get rid of 50 people in a week, more than 70-odd people came in one boat alone. And on the front page of the Times, it's got Europe could block a deal on boat migrants, so it might not even go anywhere anyway, because nobody in the European Union wants to return people out of Britain into France, into Italy, into Germany, into Spain. And of course, the Daily Mail, I think, tops them all with having scrapped Rwanda. Starmer launched his own deterrent yesterday, a half-baked one-in, one-out deal with France, yet it won't stop the boats. And even as it was unveiled, hundreds more migrants landed here. And a great big headline just says, "What a joke." And it is. The whole thing is totally and utterly ridiculous. We're going to talk about that, of course, this morning. Also, we're going to talk about the impending doctor strike, because they're still now claiming that it is non-negotiable. They want 29%, or they're all walking out on July the 25th for 5 days, causing God knows what sort of mayhem. Somehow, Wes Streeting this morning is suggesting maybe we'll just take some of your pension, because, of course, they do get a very large and very handy pension for working in the NHS as well. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the dangerous streets of London. Still, they haven't found the person responsible for the stabbing death that happened at Knightsbridge just the other night. A guy comes into London with his girlfriend. They sit in a very expensive restaurant. They come out to get into his car. He gets assailed by somebody trying to steal his very expensive watch, and he's now dead. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. We're going to be talking as well about Wimbledon, because it is Wimbledon weekend, the final weekend, and it's been baking hot. Yesterday, 4 people had to be assisted because they passed out from the heat. I'm going there again, believe it or not, on Saturday. So I don't know what I'm going to take with me. Maybe some cold flannels, or possibly an ice pack. We'll get to that. Also, sick note Britain, front page of the Times. There's so many people taking the day off sick now that probably Friday has got minimum 35% occupancy in offices in London. The GPs will be told to stop issuing millions of sick notes to sign people off work and instead send them to job coaches or the gym. Right, OK, let's see how that goes. It's 7 minutes past 6. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And a very good morning to you. Charlie Rowley's here, former number 10 spin doctor. Is that fair? Good morning.
Well, that's
You're
fair.
looking very smart.
Well, I thought I'd pop on a tie for you. I thought just
very kind.
Well, I thought this is just as Robert Peston might be the home of BS.
Yes,
you
really
are the
is.
home of CS.
True.
Common sense. So
sense.
I thought I'd be.
It's very
I
true.
thought I'd put on a tie for you.
But what is wrong with? I mean, you'll have seen it from both sides. You know, now that you're sort of on the media side of things, but you will have been on the other side of it. You know, I think it's almost like they're captured, aren't they? These political correspondents who sit there day in, day out, trying to get, catch the eye of the Prime Minister whenever there's a press conference, trying to kind of, get favours from the team inside Downing Street. But it's almost, I mean, I couldn't believe what I was watching. He kept calling it one in, one out. It's not one in, one out. And it's really irritating me.
Yeah, no, excuse me, I think that's absolutely right. And I think I've never seen so much of a divide now, and so much of a gap between what goes on in Westminster correspondence and the political bubble versus the reality
and the
of what
rest
people
of us,
are feeling.
because what we're actually seeing and what we think about what we're seing, because Keir Starmer clearly has got it in his head that if he keeps repeating various different sort of mantras, people in the voting sort of arenas of Britain will just go, oh yeah, well he said it was one in, one out, so we're that stupid, we're just going to keep believing it.
Yeah, exactly. And but what people won't believe is when you have correspondence like, I think somebody from The Sun that was out with Nigel Farage watching just as this announcement was being made, a small boat being
coming in with 70 plus people on it.
Exactly. The 70 still, if you're looking at the front page of the Telegraph, very young, of working age men that aren't asylum seekers, that are not refugees. I don't know what conflicts they're fleeing. Even if they were fleeing a conflict, I don't think they'd be top of the queue in anyone's...
No, they certainly wouldn't be.
...to get into a country. So the reality of what people see day in, day out is a far cry from what people are listening to in Westminster. Because... for too long, obviously, there's not been a grip on the situation, and you're right, calling it one in, one out, when people can still see that there'll be thousands of people making that crossing.
It's anything but that. You know, it's nothing like it. And even if it was one in, one out, that's a pretty stupid idea anyway, because it doesn't actually reduce the number of people who are here.
No. And only allowing people in as part of this one in, one out, so deporting someone that's arrived illegally, taking in someone that might have ties to the UK. Well, what ties?
Yeah, exactly.
And how do you know? Because most people throw away their passports.
Oh, yeah, I've got a tie because I've got a cousin who's driving around in a Deliveroo bicycle, and I, you know, he lives in Epping Forest, and he's got 55 mates who live there as well, and they're all driving around in Deliveroo bikes, and they're all related to me. Who's going to be able to prove it? You haven't got his passport, you haven't got his details, you haven't got his fingerprints. I mean, it's the whole thing is complete and utter nonsense.
And you're right, but the idea, I mean, I can't fathom why the idea of the title or the selling point, the USP, is one in, one out. People don't want one in. They don't want like for like. They want the numbers to come down. They want the returns to start.
Exactly.
They want to stop people coming in.
And when we first announced that this was going to be the problem, people were ridiculing it on this show because they knew that it wasn't a good idea. Because it doesn't reduce the numbers. It doesn't deport the people who shouldn't be here. You know, it doesn't even talk about getting rid of the people from our prisons. You know, the whole thing is a complete sort of farrago of nonsense. And all it is Keir Starmer and his you know, big Gaul-like mate, Emmanuel Macron, hugging each other at every opportunity and making out like they're the sort of the bromance of the century. Who cares?
It's quite cringe to watch.
It really is.
When you need to do things professionally, and when you need to actually sort of, you know, I'm sure they're mates, but you know, they can save all that kind of stuff behind closed doors.
Yeah, but they're not really mates, are they? Because Starmer doesn't have any mates. I mean, he literally doesn't have any mates. The only mates he's got working in the human rights area of the law, like old, what's his face?
Hermer.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. Let's have a look at what he actually said. This is Keir Starmer at his absolute worst, announcing that he's got a groundbreaking migrant deal. Like we're idiots.
So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally.
So, first of all, he says he's going to detain people. Where's he going to detain them? And how long is he going to detain them for before they are returned? And another individual will be chosen to come to this country. How are they going to identify these people who they don't know? Where are they going to detain them? When he was asked, you know, can you elaborate a little bit more on exactly what the details are, he hid behind his old Southport thing, where he went, oh, no, we can't tell you any of the details because, you know, that might jeopardise the operation. Well, how's it going to jeopardise the operation? If you're going to tell people not to come here because you might end up being detained, you better tell them how that's going to work.
Totally. And the idea that it's been reported as a groundbreaking deal by the Prime Minister's own words just there. It's a pilot scheme. So it's not even done and dusted. We don't know how it's actually going to work.
And the EU's going to reject it anyway.
And just going back to your point about, you know, some not having any friends, I think that's absolutely poignant because, you know, the French and Macron has been no friend of ours since we've left the EU. And people have absolutely a right to vote to remain and the right to vote to leave. It just so happened that the majority voted to leave. But since then, in good faith, as an Anglo-French Franco relations, you've got to work together. Macron has gone out of his way, throwing his toys out the pram since we've left, to talk down the UK.
Absolutely.
Trying to say that, we couldn't get a deal, or actually the migrant crisis got worse since Brexit. Yes, it has, because you failed to cooperate in stopping the post, because you've allowed people to drag themselves across the channel into the UK to talk the UK down, to say, well, you know, it's a punishment to the UK.
Oh, totally.
You need to uphold your end of the bargain, mate.
And he's basically saying, and he said it yesterday, that the people of Britain were sold a lie over Brexit, and that's partly why the migrants have become such a problem. Well, I'm sorry, mate. Migrants are a problem all over Western Europe, you know. They're a problem in Italy. I mean, Greece only this week decided to shut their borders to all illegal migrants coming from North Africa, and they did it the proper way, where they just went, if you land on our shores, we will arrest you and we will detain you in a detention centre in Crete, which they're currently building, and then we will send you back to North Africa under armed escort. You know, this BS deal is all about, you know, we will detain you and you will be returned.
Yes.
But we can't say when, and we can't say where you'll go in the meantime.
And exactly, because the person that gets returned, the one out from the UK, supposedly, into France, there's no legal requirement for the French authorities to monitor that person.
No.
They'll just be hovering around again in Calais and making another attempt
and coming back,
to the UK.
And also, the people of this country don't want them to then go and find an individual who can come here legally. We don't want any more people, thanks.
No,
you know,
exactly.
just stay away. Just stay where you are.
Exactly.
That's what we want. Here he is saying he won't give any details of what's going on.
It will be operationalised in coming weeks, so that is a good thing. It is, of course, a pilot. It is there to prove the concept that if you come over by small boats, then you will be returned to France. Of course, being a pilot, it is very important that it works, and we need to make sure that it does work. And if it works, what it does is break the model, and that's the only way in the end to stop this vile trade. And so that's why this is a real breakthrough moment today. As I say, many governments have tried to get this far and have failed to do so. In terms of those that will be returned, I'm not going to go into the details of that because that has the potential to undermine how this will operate.
How? How does it have the potential to undermine how this will operate?
Yeah.
You know, surely if you want people not to come, you warn them that if you come, this is what's going to happen to you, and this is why you shouldn't come, as opposed to going, we're going to keep it secret what's going to happen to you, because, you know, if you do come, it might be actually, we don't know what we're going to do, really. If it works, it'll be great.
Yes.
What's he talking about?
Yeah.
Idiot.
Quite right. And, you know, the idea that many governments have tried to get this far, I don't think they have. I don't recall any government that I was a part of or read that tried to get as far as having a one-in, one-out scheme. The last government I remember that I was part of had a Rwanda scheme in place that didn't get off the ground. Which he killed and went out of his way to sort of say how terrible that was. And I just wish, you know, that the previous government, if it had any oomph or pizzazz about it, would have actually overruled the courts that stopped those fights taking off, that would have said, you know what, we'll take the legal hit, we'll deal with the legal implications afterwards, but get those flights going to Rwanda, let the world see that if you do come to the UK, you will be detained, you will be deported, that's not the way to go about things, that's not the way to enter another country, and, you know, things might have been better, but we've got a lawyer as a leader of this country that scrapped all of that, that's now botched a deal in the Chagos Islands, that's botched a deal here, but is going out there hailing it as some sort of great success.
But even he doesn't, but you can tell even he doesn't actually think it's going to work, because he's actually saying if it works. Those are his words, not my words, his words. If it works, it will be a great deterrent. Well, you might as well say, you know, if I make the, you know, the world's biggest ball of cheese and roll it into the channel, if that works, that'll be great. You know, well, it doesn't matter. You know, you can do anything you like if it works, if it doesn't work. But, you know, it won't work, will it?
Exactly. And many people will be asking the question, if this can be a bilateral agreement between the UK and France, because obviously I think, as you said before, the EU have got to ratify this because France is still part of the EU.
Right.
If you can have a bilateral agreement, well, why didn't we have one sooner? I point again to our friends in France that obviously didn't want to have one because they wanted to blame it on Brexit. They wanted to talk down the UK because they threw their toys out the pram that we left the club. So I think if you can have these bilateral agreements, well, that's great, but that shows what an independent UK state can do. That's probably the only positive I can think of. This deal that actually demonstrates.
Meanwhile, you know, the thing they don't mention, and the thing that nobody asks them about because they're all too busy, like Robert Peston, trying to convince us all how clever they are. £771 million we've given to the French. For what exactly? You know, what have we got for that money? Nothing. The world's most expensive Stanley knife, as somebody pointed out, when they stuck it into that dinghy. You know, 771 million quid for that. Let's have a look at what he said about how jobs will no longer exist for migrants.
Been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale. The President and I have agreed that this pilot will be implemented in coming weeks. That is why today's agreement is so important, because we will solve this, like so many of our problems, by working together. This is our plan together, hard-headed, aggressive action on all fronts to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and show that by attempting to reach the UK by small boat will only end in failure, detention, and return.
I'm sorry, I can't watch him anymore. I really struggle. What's he talking about?
Yes.
It's a joint operation. What's it got to do with Macron, who's getting jobs here, and what they're doing? You know, hard-headed crackdown. You know, you can't just keep saying things and expect us to believe them. No. It's rubbish.
And when you see...
he should be done. I mean, I've got a thing here. John in Blackpool says, "Morning, Mike. It appears to me that Keir Starmer has broken the Trades Description Act. I want my money back." I mean, he's right, isn't he? He keeps describing things that just aren't there.
Yeah, and hoping that people just listen, as you say.
And so when everybody wakes up in the morning, they'll go, "Oh, I watched Robert Peston last night," and they're really cracking down. They're very hard-headed. They're going to stop all these illegal migrants working in the black economy. Yeah. Are they really? Have you looked around London? Have you looked around Coventry? Have you looked around Liverpool, Manchester? You know, they're all working in the black economy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how many people, as you say, on bikes delivering fast food, you know, through apps and things, who working in barber shops, nail bars, the tourist and leisure industry. You know, these people are everywhere.
Of course they are.
Because the Home Office hasn't got a handle on it.
No.
They don't know who they are. And you know, the idea that it's going to stop people wanting to come to the UK, you literally probably now just have to turn up to France, who won't do very much checks.
No.
Why would they?
No.
It's not in their jurisdiction, but they will, present themselves and say, "Well, I've got ties to the UK." And will it be,
If France really wanted to stop the migration problem in Britain, they would stop people coming into France.
Yeah.
But they don't do that either.
No.
You know, they're coming in from all angles, aren't they? They're coming in via Italy, into the French country from there. They're coming in from Spain. They're coming in probably from Belgium. You know, every single border that France has with other European countries, they're all porous, and they're letting all these people come in.
Yep.
And then they're letting them go all the way to Normandy and carry on and get to Britain.
And it's not good enough just a day or two before a state visit for, cameras just so happen to be on the beaches where police then sort of burst a dinghy to stop it taking off, as if that's a big demonstration.
And why, by the way, why has Starmer not made any comment about, or any suggestion that France should be doing something to clear up their own backyard? Yeah. For all these migrants.
Well, exactly.
There's no mention of that.
And the idea that Macron can come over to the UK and say that the UK public was sold a lie.
Yeah.
You would have thought there'd be a little bit of pushback to the president to say, well, we live in a democracy, and it wasn't a lie, but things might have been a bit easier had we had a bit more cooperation from your side.
Exactly, absolutely unbelievable. Yesterday, meanwhile, Nigel Farage was out in the English Channel as all of this stuff was being announced, actually counting them in, and he saw, I think, a boat, one single boat with more than 70 people on it. We're going to be talking to the Sun reporter who was out there, Sophie Slay. Was it Sophie? No, are we not? Oh, we are. We're not speaking to her. OK. I thought we were. Never mind. We speak to somebody who was out there anyway. Have a look at this.
And it's the usual drill. A dinghy has left the French beaches, been escorted over by the French Navy, and if we turn around we can see the Border Force vessel, and he's now waiting on the 12-mile line for the handover. Bear in mind, we've given the French 800 million quid since 2014, and still their Navy hands over migrant boats. Looks to be about 70 people in the boat. It's lying very low in the water. We've looked through the binoculars. The French Navy have now stopped, and this boat is right on the edge of French and British waters, and Border Force are waiting just behind me. It's interesting. We're literally watching one government politely handing over to another government. 78 people on that rib, one woman, 3 kids, and 74 young adult males whose identity we do not know. If this is not a national security emergency, I don't know what is.
Nigel Farage, of course, has been doing this for years. I mean, he used to do it many, many years ago when we would talk to him on an almost weekly basis when he was down there. And he's written a big piece in the Mail today saying, "I firmly believe none of the 74 young men I saw in that small boat should be free to roam our streets." And he's right, isn't he? Because we don't know who they are.
Exactly, and they'll turn up and they'll get hotel accommodation, and they'll be able to access benefits of up to about 50 quid a week. They'll get their dental treatment. They'll get to see a doctor if that's what they need to. They'll be offered days out at the expense of the local council for integration or English lessons.
And they'll just hang around generally.
And they'll hang around.
And if they fancy delivering some food, they'll get paid for that and not have to worry about paying any tax.
Exactly. And what really grinds my gears, without sounding a bit too sort of soft about it, is that there are people out there that are in genuine need. And we take things like Ukraine and the Homes for Ukrainians scheme, which the UK government actually set up in the past. There are actually genuine people out there that we could and maybe should be helping. But for every lefty that you get here to say, oh no, all of those 74 people in the boat, they are asylum seekers, they are refugees, you've got to say to those people that you're part of the problem.
Right.
The left that is defending this, that has always defended it, can't get a grip on it, because you are, for every one of those 74 or 70 men that you think should be here in this country, you are denying people either in Ukraine or somewhere else that is facing a conflict that actually should deserve
to come. And to be honest, even the lefties have kind of given up on the whole argument of why we must allow everybody to come to this country. But the people who are sort of pushing it more and more and more are local councils, because the local councils are the ones who are saying, we're going to be a sanctuary council, we're going to allow you to come and live here, and we're going to commandeer, homes for you, we're going to commandeer hotels for you. They're the ones that are sort of getting involved in all of that. And I think even most sensible or even more stupid lefties have worked out that actually there's no point in defending the mass immigration influx in this country, because nobody wants it.
But why does it take those people so long? I mean, it
5 years.
It's a bit like Just Stop Oil. The actions that you're doing is a turn off to people. You're not winning the argument. Now that Reform, for example, but as you've seen, I've just been talking about this for a long time. Reform won big wins in the elections last year, the local elections, and in the general election. Wake up and smell the coffee. That actually the national conversation has changed. People want to see this dealt with. The reality is there are thousands of people that cross that channel that should not be doing it, that shouldn't be in the UK, that need to be deported. And as you say, something like what Greece has set up. Something like what the United
something
States
actually
is always
positive.
The alligator Alcatraz is always a little bit maybe. America is always.
That's a brilliant idea.
But something. You should have a centre. I don't like to call it a detention centre. Because I don't want... Well, first of all, I don't want to see people in hotels. Right. I don't want to see people in tents. Right. So I want people held in a particular...
What's wrong with calling it a detention centre? I mean, that's what it should be, shouldn't it? I mean, it should be a place where people go who have no right to be here. Well, it's not... We don't have to offer them any kind of sanctuary. They're not running away from anything. They're just coming here to make a bit more money.
No, I do. I just... Or maybe I'm... maybe I'm a bit too soft on Friday morning, but there might be... For the one or two... So the women and children that were in that boat, the overwhelming minority, but... They might actually...
These are people, by the way, who are putting their children's lives at risk.
Well, yes.
So I don't think you should be too, nice to them.
But something where you're held for 48, 72 hours at maximum. But if you turn up without a passport because you've either thrown it overboard, or you can't tell us who you are, you can't tell us your age, you can't tell us where you've come from, what conflicts you're fleeing, what's the point of you being here, then you're deported. Yeah. If you can't answer those basic questions, then you don't have a right to be here. Yeah. If you're seeking asylum, if you're seeking refuge, you've got to be able to provide the most basic of detail to tell us what it is that you're here for.
You've got to remember, a lot of these people are coming here from slum sort of situations in whatever their home country is. I was waiting for a bus yesterday, a very quiet street, two guys cycling past, both of them on sort of, food delivery bicycles, electric bicycles. Two guys, obviously from India, talking in Punjabi to each other. And I thought to myself, you could have been doing this, in Delhi. But you're doing it in London because you've come here, probably illegally, and now you're working. And I'm sure it's a very much nicer life in London than it is in Delhi, where they probably live in a slum. That's what we're dealing with here. These are people who have come here because they think it's a better chance for them to get on in life. And, I don't mind that. But, please do it legally, otherwise you can't do it.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
Exactly. And everything is tied together. So, I mean, I know it was sort of yesterday's front page, where, if you could be on out-of-work benefits and you could earn $2.5 grand more than someone that's on minimum
Well, we'll come back to that, because that's Sick Note Britain, which is on the front page of the Times. We'll come back to that in a moment, because we've gone way over. Absolutely outrageous. 6:28. Let's get a voice note from Adrian.
Morning, Mike. It's Adrian from East Sussex. Lovely morning here, and your show has just started. I'm sure it'll be a great one. Just an observation on that video from Nigel Farage in the channel yesterday. We might as well just send ferries across. It must be much, much cheaper than have all those vessels and everything else moving backwards and forwards. And let's just be honest about it. This government and previous governments are just importing these people deliberately, and stop the lies. Then at least the public can truly see what's going on.
I mean, I can't argue with that. I don't think they're doing it deliberately. I just think they're so useless they can't figure out how to stop it, because they're so kind of hog-tied about saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, giving the wrong impression. You know, it's very obvious what's going on. These are people that we don't want here, and they shouldn't be allowed to come, and they should be immediately rejected. It's as simple as that. It's 6:29.
What we're talking about here, 50 a week, something like that.
Yeah, 50 to 50 a week. Yeah.
It's 50 a week. Okay, you said today there's about over 700.
We think 700 a day, 2,599 last week. Think about that.
So it's anything up to 1,000 a day, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, how the hell have we got here? Because in 2018, it was around the number of migrants crossing the Channel was 299 for the year.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:32. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It is Friday. It is the 11th of July, believe it or not. We're coming into a very, very busy weekend, of course. We'll be here for you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We've got all sorts of voice notes coming through. By the way, in case you are thinking that you might need to get in touch with us in a variety of different ways, we've got a new way for you to get in touch. Because if you've got a story that has affected your family or you, and you think we should know about it and investigate it further, here's what you do. You can email us at tips@talk.tv. That's tips@talk.tv. We've already got a whole load of really, really interesting pieces of information that you have told us about, and we will be investigating all of it. Emmanuel Macron, of course, was here for 3 days. I think he's finally gone home after having been given a banquet at Windsor Castle, which a lot of people thought was a bit over the top in this current day and age where nobody can afford to actually go out for dinner. And he was still here yesterday, swanning around in Downing Street, swanning around in Westminster. And here's what he's tweeted yesterday, in which he basically says that he's had a lovely time and it's all been super duper. He hasn't really talked about an unprecedented deal at all, has he?
The staircase.
Yes, finally we meet again. At the invitation of His Majesty, I came here today to renew the French people's message of friendship and fraternity.
We have all the Prime Ministers up here.
in these challenging times to work together on Ukraine.
So Churchill sat there.
Oh, yeah, the old hand on the back. I mean, it's just awful, isn't it? It's just mind-numbingly dim. And, you know, Starmer going, oh, here's where all the Prime Ministers are. I didn't go, this is where Margaret Thatcher's statue, you know, portrait used to be. I took it down. I didn't like her eyes following me around the room. You know, he's such a phony. I think that's the word for him. He's a phony, I think, isn't he?
Yeah. And I think and I can imagine number 10 sort of insider strategists have said, right, OK, your poll ratings are very low, but you poll quite well, or you are perceived to be polling quite well when it comes to the international stage. So let's do something that makes you even more statesmanlike because the domestic agenda is
Except he can't even do that, though.
We can't do that. But because the public will be looking at that thinking, OK, you've just announced a deal to tackle one of the biggest issues that many people across this country think is the #1 issue, which needs to be faced. You've not done anything yet.
No.
So wait until you've actually agreed something, or certainly seen what you've agreed, work in practice, see when you actually stop some of those votes, when those numbers start to come down, then have a nice party.
Yeah.
Well,
but this is the mark now of this Labour government, isn't it? They make an announcement, and then about 24 hours later they've moved on. You know, and they think because they've made the announcement that's an achievement, and it's not an achievement. All they've done is they've said we're going to do this, and then they don't do it anyway.
No, exactly.
I mean, I would love to see. I mean, I bet none of them will do it, but the Westminster, lobby pack going up in about a week's time and say to Keir Starmer, so. Can we have the first 50 people that you've sent back to France? Who are they? And does anybody challenge their removal? Or has it happened? Do we know who they were? Have they gone? Do you know they're not coming back? Let's have the first 50. When are we going to have them?
Well, absolutely. And who are the first 50 that might be coming into the country? And when there'll be checks on those people, I can guarantee there'll be people there who shouldn't be in the country, who are probably committed crime elsewhere, that are criminals that shouldn't be on the streets. But the checks and balances would have all been suppressed. Or, well, it was just a pilot, so obviously there's going to be teething problems. We've got to sort those out. That's a load of old nonsense. So, I think we're going to still see this issue not tackled.
And can we point out that when he came in on July the 4th of 2024, which is now over a year ago, he was smashing the gangs. Now he's doing a pilot, which might remove 50 people.
And where's that gone?
Not exactly smashing the bleeding gangs, is it? He doesn't say it anymore. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. Just regarding Wish You Were Here, Never Here, Free Gear, Care. 1 year, Mike. Can't believe it. In 1 year. And I tell you what, Mike, in 1 year he's done he's done nothing. Apart from annoy farmers, annoy the old age pensioners. Just quickly, Mike, just regarding wokest of woke kings. I mean, fancy saying that he doesn't believe in borders. I mean, that is one of the most stupid things I've ever heard. You want to stick your head out the window, son, and come to Dover? Bloody hell. Best show of the week, that one, Mike. And Morning Glory, great show. You're a workaholic, Mike. Thank you for all your hard work. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Mike.
James, brilliant. You can't argue with that, really, can you? I mean, he has done Jack, as he says, nothing. He's done nothing. The number of people coming has gone up. We've had a record number of people coming since January. We've had a record number of people coming since last July. It's practically 45,000, I think, now on the migrant tracker. The whole scenario is just collapsing in on him. And all he can say to us is 1 in, 1 out. We've got a great pilot scheme. It's going to be marvellous. We can't give you any details. Obviously, that would be wrong. Just get lost.
Well, you're quite right. And it makes you wonder, what would, you mentioned a second ago, Margaret Thatcher. What would she do in a situation like this? What would she have done?
She'd do what Greece is doing. She'd just go, if you come here, we're going to put you in a detention centre, even though you don't want to call it that, and we're going to then deport you with the help of the military back to where you came from. And if that happens to be France, then that's where you're going.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And, again, it's one of those sliding door moments in history. People voted for Brexit for all kinds of reasons. I get that. But could you, what would have happened, do you think, in history, if only David Cameron had got an actual better deal when it came to freedom of movement, because the Germans laughed at him and said, no, you can't have that freedom of movement. This idea, as James was absolutely saying, the EU don't believe in borders because it's all lovey-dovey and we should be able to move and migrate where we want. a load of old nonsense.
You're all one big happy family.
One big family, exactly. If only David Cameron had actually got a better deal, and then was able, and then if the country did vote to remain on the back of a deal that might have stopped people coming to the UK, would we be still there? Would we be able to do?
I think the EU as a construct is more or less dead and buried. I mean, there's nothing good going on in the European Union.
No.
Most of the countries in Europe are now kind of forging their own deals one way or another. It's Italy going their own way. The Greeks are doing what they want. The French are doing what they want. The Spanish are doing what they want. The Germans are kicking people out, sending them back to Afghanistan. In Scandinavia, the same. Nobody in Europe actually cares about the European Union, apart from the people in Brussels who run it.
Yes.
It's a completely failed organisation. It's gaff time, though, so let's cheer ourselves up. Let's have one from Julie Hartley-Brewer.
It does seem, on the face of it, to be utterly. I've got a little fly running around. Hello, it's very hello, little fly coming to see me. Very disconcerting. But the idea is, okay, so someone pays a people smuggler. They get on a boat. They get here. Sorry, sound landed on me. It's like I'm being inundated. There are no flies on her. Yes, there are. Don't know why it's so discombobulating. Being attacked by animals while you're talking.
I'm sorry, it's actually not an animal, a fly. I mean, I've got to point that out. It's an insect. Did she bring it in with her, I wonder? Because I didn't have a fly in the studio when I was here. Maybe it followed her in from the tube.
Well, yes.
Who knows? Anyway, we'll have more of those sort of gaffes. I guess we better take a break because we're probably running very late. Anyway, more to come right here on Morning Glory, 6:40.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:41. I'm Mike Graham. This from Glyn, who says, if all these people come into the UK from the slums, how can they afford £1,500 each to get across? Where is the money coming from? And why are they not tracing the money back to where it's going? Great shows as always. Well, Glyn, this is a very good question. I think part of the problem is that an awful lot of people who come over on these boats are not paying the money, but they're sort of owing the money, if you like. So once they get here, they then get roped into some kind of gang, whether it's prostitution, whether it's people smuggling, whether it's drugs, whatever it is, something basically criminal, and they're sort of enslaved to the gang masters, if you like, and because everybody's making money. That's what it's all about. Here's one from Dal, who says, good morning. Why did no journalist ask Macron what he's doing with all the money we've handed over to him? Well, it's a very good point. I don't know. And that's the trouble. An awful lot of journalists just don't ask the right questions. And Jeff says, morning, Mike, long-time watcher here. If you put 285 migrant boats together on the English Channel, that's 20,000 migrants this year, divided by 70 per boat. I bet it would look like an invasion. Well, of course it would. Absolutely right. And as if we don't want any more layabouts coming to this country, front page of the Times this morning, crackdown to cure UK of sick note epidemic. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, said we simply can't afford to keep writing people off as he launched the government. Another pilot scheme. Why are they doing all these pilot schemes after they've been in for a year? Aimed at ensuring the NHS helps people to find ways to work. They're going to trial this in 15 different regions. GP surgeries will be given funding to provide specialist support to patients rather than simply signing them off. So we're going to give them job coaches and presumably access to the gym. I mean, I know, because we speak to doctors all the time on this show, that doctors have said we'll sometimes give somebody a sick note without even seeing them.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
Sign them off for a week.
Yeah, and just as we've seen, I think people that are dealing with the asylum backlog and the processing there, where it's just far too easy to say, oh yes, okay, I'll grant you asylum, rather than explain, no, you're being rejected for X, Y, Z. Right. It should be the other way around. For far too long, we know that doctors have just prescribed you antidepressants if you turn up because you've asked for them, or you've just been signed off on a sick note, because it's easier to say, oh, I'll sign that, I'll sign you off, I'll give you a green
than to say, would you mind coming into the surgery so I can actually examine you?
Exactly. And since COVID and since lockdown and since things obviously for a period of time things had to be a little bit different, so you had to have assessments online because you couldn't have face-to-face contact. Now all of that should be done away with. The idea that that's still happening, so consultancy via Zoom, and for a doctor just behind a screen to say, yeah, I'll sign it off for you, rather than having that contact with that patient to say, no, actually what you need is maybe a bit more of a healthy lifestyle, you need to move a bit more, or you need to, you're not
But loads of governments come up with this stuff, don't they? And it never actually happens, because it might sound like a good idea and it might sound like you can control it from the centre, but you can't really.
No.
It's a mindset that people have got themselves into, many of them young people. I mean, I was listening to a conversation between a couple of young people. I was on the tube yesterday, it was very busy, and so I was sort of forced into the corner. I had to listen to what they were talking about, and it's really interesting listening to how they see work. They don't see work as in any way a kind of a route to success. They don't see work in any way as a route to kind of being busy. They see it as a kind of something you do in between holidays. And all they were talking about was the next holiday and how great it's going to be to go to whatever it was place they wanted to go to. I sort of get that, but it's not like I guess it's not like my generation who had this work ethic where you just go, you've got to go to work, you've got to make money, you've got to better yourself, you've got to try and make more money so that you can have the nice things of life and you can provide for your family. These people don't have kids. They don't look like they're ever going to have kids, and they're chatting about going off to Thailand, going off to Goa, going off to God knows where in South America, and sort of working a bit in between just to pay for it.
Yes, yeah, and in the hope that when you get there or wherever you're going, that you can create some TikTok,
TikTok
Insta story that's going to make you an influencer, and that's how you're going to work, and that's going to be your life. I mean, that is for the birds, but you're right. It plays into a wider issue about the country. If you don't support yourself, if you don't think as though going to work is a good thing and earning a living and being successful and giving something back to your community,
and is a path to kind of growing your own lifestyle, if you like.
But then to flip it, I mean, the question's got to be, why would you? If you're a young person in London today, where crime is up, you can't get you can't move anywhere, you can't get a house, you can't get a job probably because of Mayor's London, City Council's London, you probably think to yourself, well, what's the point? If you haven't got an
you mean if you're already on benefits? And I'm sure that's true for a lot of people outside of London where there aren't really any jobs. I mean, a lot of people were in touch with me this week to say, it's all very well the government saying go and get a job. There aren't any.
But where's the love for the country again? Everybody, I think, is just so depressed because we've got a failing government here. We've had failing governments in the past. The standard of living isn't what it was. Certainly my parents'
but people have got so much more now than they had when I was growing up. When I was in my early 20s, people didn't have very much. Now people have got phones that are worth 1,500 quid. Televisions that incredible stuff that you could never have even considered owning. Everybody drives around in cars they can't afford. That kind of thing. Here's one for you, though, just before we take a break. This one really caught me by surprise because I hadn't known that this was going on. Did you know that Labour have a plan to launch state-funded restaurants? This is on page 10 of the Daily Telegraph, right? Apparently their plan was to give people the opportunity to go to a restaurant and pay £3 for a meal. Like some kind of North Korean thing.
Yes.
Where what do you get? You get some rice and a couple of pieces of fish or something. There's no menu. You just get given food. Can you imagine what it would be like?
Well, I think it's probably the price of a full meal in the House of Commons, isn't it? If you're in
I don't know. I've not eaten there very often.
It's quite subsidised.
It is very subsidised, isn't it? Peter Carr, the Science and Technology Secretary, says the aim was to actively explore the best ways to get healthy food into the mouths of those who need it. The trial could lead to the launch of similar schemes if successful. Apparently they're going to do this in Nottingham and Dundee. Diners have received £1.5 million worth of taxpayer funding, and they'll resemble the subsidised civic kitchens of the 1940s. What? I mean, I've seen what happened in the 1940s. They used to have rations. They've got powdered egg, right? They've got things like, gravy to go with nothing else because you haven't got any meat because there's rationing.
Yes, yeah.
What are they thinking about?
I just think this is, again, the
nanny state gone mad.
State creeping in. Well, more than creeping.
Here's some food for you. It's only going to cost you £3. And naturally, Luke Johnson and various other restaurant entrepreneurs have just said it's a ridiculous idea. Totally mad.
Yeah.
Ludicrous, some are saying.
And it's about
Second World War food. Brilliant.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Happy days. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to put this out actually to people. What could we serve in a Labour-run £3 a meal restaurant? What sort of food would you think they'd give you? Can you imagine?
Well, exactly.
Absolute nightmare.
Welcome to Britain, 2025.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. But it's individual responsibility is now wasted. You've got to push back to people and say, hang about. It's not for the state to say to you as a parent, or for schools, we're going to clean and brush your kids' teeth because you can't be able to, or we're going to look after your child at all these breakfast clubs, all these after schools.
Right.
We're going to now put on these restaurants for people. No, the government has got to focus on the things that matter to all of us.
How about kick some migrants out of the country?
Migrants,
stick to that.
Deal with the NHS, get the economy going. Those are your priorities.
Yeah.
But, people are adults in this country, they know what they should or shouldn't eat.
Yeah.
Okay, you can Google anything these days if you need to know how to cook something. It's not that difficult.
It really is.
Sometimes to make a more healthier meal.
No, we don't need any Second World War kitchens. Thanks very much indeed. Let's get a voice note from Jamie.
Labour don't actually want to sort this problem out. They never have done and they never will do. Just cast your mind back. Their one biggest pressing priority when they came into government wasn't the supposed £22 billion black hole, wasn't even the state of the NHS. Their one big pressing priority was to cancel the Rwanda scheme on day one, which they did. They killed it without even looking into it, without seeing if it worked, without getting it off the ground, without working out whether that was any form of deterrent or a solution to the problem. So the fact that they cancelled that number one pressing priority, which she told us about on the way up to the election, tells you all you need to know about that government and their stance on immigration.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Jamie. Thank you very much indeed for that. Pam says, morning, Mike. Last night, Nigel said there was another French boat taking back life jackets and taking dinghies back to France. The question is, what are the French doing with the dinghies? Well, that's a good point. Surely they should just be sticking a knife in them and chucking them in the nearest recycling bin, whatever it is. Thank you very much indeed. This is Morning Glory. We've got still a little bit of time to do a couple of other stories, and we're bringing them to you coming up right after this.
sickness bill is going to hit £100 billion by 2030 every year, of course. That's £100 billion every year just on sickness benefits alone. Yeah. And a lot of that being driven, as we've been saying, by this huge increase since the pandemic in these mild conditions. So something needs to be done. And with Reform riding high in the polls, we might have hoped that Reform and Nigel Farage would be saying things that would encourage us that they were going to grasp this nettle.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham and Charlie Rowley's here as well. We're looking through all the big stories in the papers. One here from Keith, who said, Mike, maybe they could serve a word salad in a state-run restaurant. Yeah, it's sort of got shades of sort of Soviet-era Russia, hasn't it? Where you go in and you haven't got any chicken. No, haven't got any chicken this week.
Or some humble pie.
Humble pie. Very good idea. Yeah, let's get some more of these coming in, please. Text us on 87222. Send us them to the X account at talkTV. Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Morning, Mike. Phil from Peterborough. An absolutely beautiful Friday morning. But I'm angry, Mike. I'm angry. I see Starmer simping over Macron. The French don't like us. I see the country going to an absolute... It's a disgrace. We are absolutely going down the gurgler. Why are we allowing this to happen? I just don't know what to do with this anger that's just building up, and it needs to stop. We need a strong leader. Look at Trump. Look at what he did. He stopped illegal immigration in its tracks. Why can't we do that? Have a good day, buddy. Bye.
Yeah, listen, Phil, I feel your pain. A lot of people feel like Phil does. They're just angry because they don't like the way this country is being kind of stewarded. They don't like where it's going. They don't like, what they find every single day they walk out. I mean, we've got that terrible story in Knightsbridge of the guy who was stabbed, goes out for a meal with his wife or his girlfriend into that Salt Bay restaurant, which is around the bottom of the casino, Park Tower, very well-known spot next to Harvey Nicks. We don't know yet what is the reason for it, but in the middle of, central London, in a very sort of well-regarded part of London and well protected, you would think, somebody gets stabbed to death. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's awful. It's horrific, but this is a sign of London now. Yeah, it feels. Nowhere is safe. You can't get even. Well,
Jake Berry yesterday, when he came in to talk to us as the first broadcast interview of his defection from the Tories to Reform, he said, you can't walk down the street with a phone in London. No, because you really can't.
Yeah,
everybody knows somebody who's had their phone nicked if you haven't had it nicked yourself.
Yeah. And the power of social media, one of the is that people are recording. Yeah, and people are seeing. Yeah. And so you've got people that are on the small end. Even though it's frustrating as it is, people sort of just jumping through and jumping through the gates at tube stations. Right. Very annoying for actually people that are paying.
Totally.
To the higher end of having your phone nicked on the high street because somebody's come on an e-bike, having your bike stolen outside because somebody's...
And we're giving them the free bike to ride around on.
Exactly.
They're just using the electric bikes that you can just pick up on the street.
But the criminals are so brazen about it. That's the thing. There's got there is no deterrent there.
No, there isn't.
Where are the police? Right. When you need them. And I think this is only going in one direction.
Yeah, exactly right. And while we talk about that, let's have an update on the Manchester Airport trial now, because jurors yesterday were shown footage of PC Lydia Ward with blood streaming from her nose following an incident at Manchester Airport. The court heard that PC Lydia Ward was attacked by Mohammed Fahir Amaz in July 2024 after officers tried to arrest him for allegedly headbutting a man in a Starbucks at the airport. Let's have a look. Mohammed Fahir Ahmad and his brother Mohammed Ahmad deny all the charges. The trial continues at Liverpool Crown Court. Obviously, we can't discuss the case because the trial's still ongoing and we can't discuss it until the trial is over. But we'll continue to report on the details of the case. And we thought we should bring you that today. Let's talk about Wimbledon because Wimbledon fortnight comes to an end this week. I think it's going to be remembered for, one, very, very hot weather, but also, two, for the real controversy, which I first raised, I think, about the line calls and the fact that they've got this automated, line call system, which has been a disaster. Practically every game has had an incident which has been, responsible for wrong calls being made.
Totally. And I was never a fan of a VAR. I'm still not a fan of VAR because although you do get mistakes and people will be, probably reaching for their remotes to sort of throw something because, you want the right result at the end of the day.
You do, but VAR but can be misinterpreted as well.
Totally, because it still relies on the human sort of, but it's part of the game. I think humans sort of, making decisions and it excites us and it terrifies, it makes us tear our hair out. But at least it gives us something to talk about and it gives us something to be passionate about. And here, one of the signature things about Wimbledon was the line judges. So to get rid of them and replace it with some
technology. And the drama as well, which has disappeared of when somebody could challenge a call, was really part of the experience. And now there's none of that. It's all disappeared. It's all gone very kind of vanilla, it seems to me.
Yeah, I think it's very sterile now because tennis is actually a very human interaction. Like as you say, it's quite a community game. I think, which is not exclusive, but it should be for everybody. But having the line judges making decisions, and if they get it wrong, nobody castigates them. It's just part of the game.
We've got to go. We're out. We'll see you after the news.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with our regular chips for £8 and 10p, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60p. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 7. It is Friday, the 11th of July, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know quite how we've got here, but here we are, nonetheless. Sarah Atherton coming up, the Reform MP, of course, from Runcorn. We'll be getting her view on this ridiculous idea of... I don't even want to say it, really, the one-in, one-out thing, because it's not what it is. Everybody's calling it the one-in, one-out deal, which, of course, if it was even that, would be a bad idea. But it's nothing like that. It's the best 17 in, 1 out. We don't really know how it's going to work. Starmer hasn't given us any idea as to how it's going to work. He doesn't want to jeopardise the operation, he says. Quite frankly, I don't think he knows how it's going to work. How on earth are they going to pick one person out of the 17 that come in to nominate to send back to France on the basis that they have no right to be here? What if all 17 of them have no right to be here? What happens then? 700 plus plus came in yesterday as Nigel Farage stewarded it from the coastline of Dover. He was out there on a boat watching as these men came in. There was 3 women, I think he said, or three women and 1 child. Everybody else was a young single man. They're all now living in this country, probably living very nicely in a hotel, probably been well fed. They're waking up this morning wondering what to have for breakfast. They won't have to pay any money for that, unlike you, waking up this morning thinking, how am I going to get to work? Am I going to get a train? Am I going to get in the car? Am I getting a bus? Am I going to walk to work? Am I going to able to buy something to eat? I don't know, because, you know, I've got less money than I had last week. You know, the whole situation in this country is dire, quite frankly, and we need to get some form of answer as to how this government can continue to gaslight us, continue to lie to us, continue to pretend that everything's fine, and to continue to pretend that they've got a great deal with the leader of France, President Emmanuel Macron, who is soon to be kicked out of office. Absolutely unbelievable. La Grande Farce doesn't even begin to cover it. Let's get a voice note, though, from all of you who get in touch. This is what you do.
Morning, Mike. Phil from Peterborough. An absolutely beautiful Friday morning. But I'm angry, Mike. I'm angry.
It's Adrian from East Sussex. Lovely morning here, and your show has just started. I'm sure it'll be a great one.
Morning, Mike. Joan from Norfolk.
Good morning, Mike. Just regarding wish you were here, never here, free gear care. 1 year, Mike. Can't believe it. In 1 year. And I tell you what, Mike, in 1 year, he's done jack.
I mean, and that's being polite, I have to say. That is exactly right. We've also been asking you for what it would be like. I mean, I kid you not, right? The Labour government have actually decided that they're going to open some state-run restaurants. It's like we're living in sort of pre-Soviet Russia. When you go in there, what are you going to get? According to Kim, you're going to get 1940s-style food, ratatouille with real rat, spotted dick, a Starmer favourite. Absolutely right. I mean, who knows? Let's get a few more menu items, shall we, for the state-run restaurant. You know, gulag and chips. Fantastic. You know, if your name's Lucy, we'll lock you up for 31 months and you'll get bread and water. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Also, Sick Note Britain. Apparently, according to the front page of the Times, doctors are going to stop giving people free sick notes so that they can take loads of time off work, and instead they're going to send them to the gym or to job coaches. Well, good luck with that. Jeez, I mean, what is going on? 0344 499 1000. Also, they found a unicorn skull somewhere near Arthur's Castle down in Cornwall. I don't know what it means. It's quite a funny story, though. It's in the Sun. This is, of course, the home of common sense. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. They've done it again to me. They've given me the new breaking news. The UK economy shrinks for a second month in a row, contracting by 0.1% in May after a 0.3% contraction in April. No doubt Rachel Thieves will come up with some reason why this is brilliant news. It's great. It's only shrunk by 0.1%. OK, Rachel, try not to burst into tears, will you, for the next couple of days? Crikey. Let's talk to Sarah Poacher to get some common sense on the show. Sarah, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Oh, my God. I don't know is a straight answer. You know, I can't believe that we've got... I mean, even our own news department are doing it. This is one in, one out. It's not bloody one in, one out. It's nothing like one in, one out. Would you stop saying it? I watched Robert Peston last night and I wanted to throw a brick at the television, you know, because he was busy contracting himself into all sorts of, you know, strange shapes, trying to explain how great it was. It's rubbish, isn't it? It's just nonsense. It's like we're being led by people who are trying to convince us of something which just isn't true.
Look, it's 800 in and none out.
Right.
Let's face it. This is absolutely, you know, it's teetering around the edges. Nothing's going to happen here. I've never heard anything so ridiculous as one in, one out. So Macron's come over, hasn't he? Look at this big hoax.
Yeah.
For goodness sake.
The bromance.
For goodness sake, this Prime Minister is trying to scrabble around, find something to offer the British people as some kind of comfort that he is in charge and that he knows what he's doing. And looking at these pictures, honestly, the British people are not stupid. They know that nothing is being done, that 800 are coming in every day. Nigel was in the Channel yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know that. He watched the first boat of the day being handed over by the French Navy to our border force that were waiting for the boat at the 12-mile limit, and they handed over. There were 74 on that boat, managed to find a woman and a couple of children, and the rest of them were all young fighting-age men coming into our country that we then lose in our communities, and we don't know what's happening. So the security risk to this country on a daily basis now is rocketing. We should be we all are concerned.
Yeah.
We're concerned. We know the government has lost control, and I don't think that the British people are going to put up with this for much longer. And I really I know from what people say to me on the streets that they have no confidence in this Prime Minister. We can't go on, Mike, for 4 years like this.
Well, we really can't. I mean, because I said this morning, these people, the 74 young men that Nigel counted coming in yesterday, and that's only one boat, let's face it. There's no point in calling them small boats anymore. I'm starting to get really cheesed off with the way that this government tries to name things, so that they're kind of, they sound better than they are. It's not a small boat. It's a giant bleeding rib,
exactly
with
what I say.
77 people coming in the same way that, I'm sick to death of people like King Charles calling it irregular migration. It's not bloody irregular. It's very regular. It happens every day. The fact that these guys are waking up in a hotel somewhere this morning, not worrying about how they're going to feed themselves, not worrying about how they're going to pay the electricity bill, not worrying about whether they've got a job, because they're getting, very well treated by the taxpayer. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, we are paying for all of this. It's only people like myself, people like Nigel, who clearly for years and years has been doing. We can see him there on the screen, bothering to go out and highlight these issues. But the British people know what's happening. They can see these shocking pictures, and still the Labour government is in utter denial, as was the Tory government for 14 years. I was doing a debate yesterday with a Labour MP who was calling reform racist, telling, being so shocked on air about me saying things like we're clothing them, we're feeding them, we're housing them, they're using our dentists, they're using our doctors, and accusing us of being racist, accusing this party of raising these issues that shouldn't be raised. Well, the British people want to have a voice. It's long overdue that we give the British people a voice, and that is exactly what I am doing. And I tell you what, Mike, when we're in power, we will be turning these boats around. Greece is doing it at the moment. If Greece can, as soon as they come ashore, Greece gathers them up, deportation centre, off they go back to where they come from, and they will never ever be allowed to apply for status in this country again. A government could do this if they have the will to do it.
Exactly.
This government doesn't have the will. The last government doesn't have the will. Reform has the will.
And look at what Starmer said yesterday. Let's look at him not giving details of how the scheme would actually work. And if you can make any sense of this, you're a better man than I am, as it were.
It will be operationalised in coming weeks, so that is a good thing. It is, of course, a pilot. It is there to prove the concept that if you come over by small boats, then you will be returned to France. Of course, being a pilot, it is very important that it works, and we need to make sure that it does work. And if it works, what it does is break the model, and that's the only way in the end to stop this vile trade. And so that's why this is a real breakthrough moment today. As I say, many governments have tried to get this far and have failed to do so. In terms of those that will be returned, I'm not going to go into the details of that because that has the potential to undermine how this will operate.
I mean, again, this guy's supposed to be a lawyer, right? Why can he not say how it's going to work? Because if you say how it's going to work, that presumably will help to deter people from coming. But by not telling them what's going to happen, they're going to keep coming.
But Mike, he's calling one in, one out a pilot scheme.
Right.
One in, one out. What is he talking about? We've got 800 landing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We've had 20,000 plus in since this Labour government took over. He's talking about one in, one out. And not only that, he can't tell us who it's going to be. Oh, and it's going to be a pilot. Mike, this is embarrassing. It's absolutely not good enough that this government is talking about this this issue in such a minor way. This is a national emergency. Nigel is calling for us to declare a national emergency. We should be getting the military involved, the Navy involved, sorting our border force. Well, border force just needs to be told what to do.
Yeah.
You know, they just follow orders. So this has got to come from the government. And you know, look at these pictures. I mean, the farce of the one boat that was slashed the other day when the BBC crew just happened to be watching.
Right.
You know, I mean. I don't know quite what more we can say other than I know that the British people are getting really angry, and I don't know if you saw the pictures of the bonfire that was set alight in Northern Ireland, burning an effigy of a boat with migrants on it. Look, I don't condone that. Clearly, no one wants to incite violence, but the fact is, Mike, the British people are in despair about how to make their feelings clear. What's that, mate?
They're at breaking point, I think, a lot of people.
We are at breaking point. The country's bankrupt, you know, and of course what they say is reform. You know, you're full of rhetoric, but no, but we're not full of rhetoric. We're full of common sense. We can see the pictures. We can see what's happening. We know how the British people feel. This government is elected to act on behalf of the British people, and yet it is denying them the vote that they gave this government. It's denying the fact that, you know, of what's going on in front of our very eyes. This is the biggest issue happening in this country at the moment. It's affecting the economy. It's affecting employment. You know, we know about the illegal market, the black market in employment that's taking jobs away. And this government talks about trade deals, it's done, and all the rest of it. Oh, my goodness, all it's doing is destroying business, destroying jobs. The number of jobs available is going down on a monthly basis. We've just heard the breaking news that the economy is shrinking yet again. And do you know what? When I was debating with this Labour MP, she said, "Oh, well, we're looking forward to the budget in the autumn." Well, Mike, she must be the only one that is, because nobody else is looking forward to that, because we know what's going to be in that budget, don't we?
Right.
We're going to have tax rises for hard-working people in this country. We've got pensioners that are going to be dragged in through fiscal drag into paying tax. The lowest income earners in this country are going to be dragged into paying tax. This government has lost control of the finances. It's obviously lost control of the borders. I mean, Keir Starmer's lost control of his MPs.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, he hasn't got control of anything at all. I'm not sure he's even got control of his own life, you know, because he just... I still don't really know why we invited Emmanuel Macron here for a state visit. You know, ludicrous amounts of... Great expense, ludicrous amounts of money. That banquet was ridiculous, right? And to sort of cosy up to a guy who basically says, you know, Brexit was a lie, people were lied to, we want you to rejoin the European Union. You put a question yesterday, I think, to the Minister for the Cabinet Office, you know, are we sure we're not going to try and rejoin the European Union? What did you get as an answer for that?
Oh, this won't surprise you at all. I didn't get any answer. So I absolutely put another big question into this government, which once again they won't answer. So the minister, I don't even know what his name is, but the paymaster general, he wasn't very happy when I introduced myself earlier, and I asked him what his name was. But that's how relevant the Labour front bench is. I didn't even know it was. But anyway, whatever his name is, you know, he starts talking about, oh, it's a good deal with supermarkets or something, and then he says, absolutely irrelevant, Mike. The point is, my question was very clear. Are we going back into the EU through the back door? Well, we know that Keir Starmer would love that to happen. That's exactly what's happening. They're cozying up. He's all over Macron. For what reason? You know, Macron is taking £800 million from us, or has already taken £800 million from us to sort these borders out. He's pocketed it. He's done absolutely nothing. You know, why would we cozy up to Macron? Macron has denied, has been a real problem, as we know, over the whole Brexit deal. He's done his utmost to make sure that we couldn't maximise the benefits of Brexit. And, you know, he is no friend to this country. He is no friend to the British people. I'm glad that Macron's on his way out. Nigel Farage is on his way in. And that's what this country needs.
Yeah, absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more. Well done. Thank you very much, Sarah, for standing up for ordinary people in this country, because somebody needs to do it. And there's not many of you, but there will be a lot more of you soon. Sarah Atherton, MP for Runcorn and Helsby Reform Party, of course. Morning, Mike, says Colleen. How long did it take Starmer and his advisers to come up with this useless and unworkable plan? How much longer do the good, hard-working people of this country have to put up with this totally incompetent government who just make things worse on a daily occurrence? And Leon says this. Morning, Mike. Leon from Newcastle. I thought we had a team of Border Force people over in France working with the French. And why aren't they out there with drones and knives puncturing these boats? Also, how can it jeopardise the project by giving out the info? You can only jeopardise a surprise project doing that. And surely migrants need to know what the project is in order for it to deter them. It's bonkers. You plonker, Rodney. Rodney! It is ridiculous. How about a voice note from Ben?
Morning, Mike. Yeah, I went out to a garage yesterday to buy myself a brand new car, and I met this real nice bloke, Keir Starmer. So he sold me this BMW, market value for £60,000. Well, I walked out of there. He gave me £75,000 in the bank. He's insured it for 20 years for me. He's given me 20 years worth of road tax. He's told me that if it ever breaks down, it's going to be repaired totally free. Well, absolutely brilliant deal. Lovely bloke. Lovely.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. It is absolutely incredible, isn't it? Just how much worse is it going to get? Morning, Mike. So does this new deal, says Jill from Berkshire, mean that the French tell the next 50 migrants they will get arrested when they get across the Channel, then get sent back to France, and then France will send them all back here legally? Ludicrous. I'm guessing that's why Starmer won't say how they're being dealt with once they get sent back. Well, the point is that Starmer doesn't know. He has not got a clue how it's going to work, because quite plainly it isn't going to work. It isn't one in, one out either. And I really, 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 really wish that people would stop referring to it as that, because it certainly is very, very far from that. 0344 499 1000. Coming up, Sir Bill Cash is going to join us, plus Justin Urquhart-Stewart, who's a proper economist, not like Rachel Reeves. He's actually going to tell us why the economy has shrunk for a second month in a row, contracting by 0.1% in May. Presumably, if it contracts in the next month, that will be officially a recession. We'll find out. This is Talk.
Thing that concerns me about that, the narrative that I'm talking about now is one that you will agree with, I'm sure, and most people will, but it has, with the rise, and this isn't a criticism of reform, they've done incredibly well in sort of building the momentum that they have, but this unworkable scheme that they've got, it's very seductive, very attractive idea, 4-point plan for stopping the boats, does not survive contact with political, diplomatic, legal or operational reality.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 23 minutes past 7. We've got loads going on today. Front page of The Sun, by the way, has got Gino, under fire TV chef, Gino De Campo, is set to start a new life down under. He's basically been told that after his various shenanigans at work, inappropriate behaviour while making various shows for ITV, he's not really got many hopes of actually getting another job here. Maybe he can take Greg Wallace with him. Greg Wallace also been banned, apparently, for life from the BBC. He's still allowed to watch it, but he can't be on it anymore due to his unfortunate behaviour, which, of course, he would say is down to his autism. Let's get a voice note from Wayne.
Good morning, Mike. Wayne from Essex here. So, just down the road from me, there's a place called OC Island. It's a beautiful island, got a few accommodations on it. Quite a lot of rich people used to have it as a sanctuary and as like a rehab sort of place. It's up for sale, Mike. It's 25 million quid. I mean, that's 25 days of hotels, and you've got an entire island surrounded by water. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not going to build a hotel. That would be stupid. But what we can do is what's good for the Syrian camps, the African camps, and any other UN camp around the world, is just put a load of white tents. Beans and rice, white tents. Do you know what, Mike? Technically, they don't even have to come off the boat because the Coast Guard can pick them up and sail them straight to the island. I mean, it's common sense and it makes sense and it's financially sound to do so. But with this government, you know it ain't going to happen. Great show, Mike.
Wayne, thank you very much indeed. It's already a better idea than anything that's come out of Downing Street in the past year. You know, an island somewhere off the coast of the southeast of England, put the migrants straight in. Absolutely. No problem at all. 25 million? You know, he says it's 25 days worth of paying for the migrants in the hotels. I'm not even sure it would go that far. Let's get a gaff, though, because it is Friday. Gaff-prone Friday, of course. Plank of the Week coming up later on tonight as well. Here's Peter Blexley.
I would like to highlight now in a little musical ditty for you,
then,
which I've come up with.
Go on.
And it goes like this.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. You take an immigrant in, you throw an immigrant out, in, out, you boat them all about, you do the Star McCokey and you turn about. Oh, that's what it's all about. Whoa. I've written other verses, but I think people are probably had enough. There you go. They're the people we've got in charge, everybody.
Yeah. Brilliant. Peter Blexley, what a great man. He'll be back for us here on Tuesday, every single Tuesday morning with the papers. Let's talk now to Justin Urquhart-Stewart, though, economist, proper economist, because the UK economy has shrunk for a second month in a row, contracting by 0.1% in May after a 0.3% contraction in April. We know that this is really all very small movements, but they're all small movements in the wrong direction. If they were going in the other direction, Justin, I'm sure we'd be hearing from Rachel Reeves about how great it's all going. This is all pretty bad news, isn't it?
Well, it looks as though we're heading for a recession. Now, as you say, the moves are very small, so you could actually say it's a small recession. But it's not growth, it's a recession. What's happening? Well, we've had car manufacturing being upset, just in case you hadn't noticed. Of course, our high-value cars are suffering the thought of higher penalties actually being exported to America. Now, we don't know the full agreements on that yet. I mean, it looks as though we won't actually suffer the worst of it. What it's done, though, it's knocked the confidence out of the industry. So what you've had is an upset in manufacturing. You've had an upset also in the oil and gas production as well, erratic demand, and that means that we don't have the certainty of income that we had before. Meanwhile, you've got retail sales still looking weak. And remember, our economy is dependent upon the consumer. You, I, and all our chums all going out, buying things, doing things. And so that accounts for around about 65, now rising sometimes 70% of the economy.
Yeah.
So if the consumer is upset, then actually it's going to be bad for the economy. And when we're seeing those figures looking bad, there's a very good chance this will be a recession. And also what we're seeing here is that the impact it's going to be having on tax. It looks as though Rachel from accounts is going to find herself with some difficulty actually having the headroom for her finances. As I say, running out of space. Therefore, what you do, we're back to the issue you've been talking about before, we'll be seeing tax rises.
But the problem is, of course, as ever the economy shrinks, the lower the tax take is, right? People are spending less money, so you get less VAT. People are not spending money on holidays in Britain because they can't afford it. They're not buying new cars. The housing market is kind of slumping at the moment as well because of the stamp duty. You know, so they must be losing out massively in terms of what the tax take is. And that's before we talk about all the people who are moving abroad and living somewhere else.
Well, what you've got to do is actually is make sure you get people with confidence to say that, OK, we're having difficult times, but, you know, things are going to get better eventually. What you want people to have confidence to think, I can go and buy and sell my house, buy another one, I can do it up. And for that, you need a taxation system which is making positive to it. Hence the issue over stamp duty. Stamp duty is a waste of time, doesn't earn a great deal of money, and it just stops actually people spending money. What you need to do, encourage people to move house, because, you know, for well, the kitchen, the bathroom, all the other bits and pieces disappear and get replaced. You spend more money, the government earns more money because more money flows through the economy. Velocity of money through the economy. Get more spending, there's more taxation. Why? Because you're normally getting VAT on that.
But
it's very simple. If you slow that up, you get less money.
But the thing that I find extraordinary, though, Justin, is here you are talking to me as if everything's not going terribly well. But when I listen to Keir Starmer talking, as he did at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday, he talks about consumer confidence being at an all-time high. He talks about how Britain's one of the fastest-growing economies in the G7, and in fact is the best-performing economy in the G7. He talks about how, you know, he's created loads and loads of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs. I mean, is this man deluded or what?
Well, it's very strange because I can't see how we're growing the economy when we've had a quarter which is going to be showing probably a shrinkage. We've got a month shrinkage last month and the month before. Get a quarter, another bit of shrinkage, it will be technically a recession. Yeah, admittedly not a huge one, but you know the indicators are heading the wrong way. Now the other thing you've got to try and do is actually encourage those people who are contributing most to encourage them to be here. And so one of those tax areas that's so crucial, people have been leaving the country because they're worried about actually the non-doms going. As a non-dom, that's so you don't normally live in this country, but so therefore you pay £30,000 and you're excluded from tax on the rest of your assets around the rest of the world. That's good. As soon as you get rid of those non-dom rules, that means those people will have to declare everything they got around the world, that's nothing to do with this country, and have to pay tax on it. What are they going to do? They're going to leave. Now, people may say, well, that's, they're wealthy enough, they can go. We need wealthy taxpayers, because wealthy taxpayers pick up most of the bill. High-rate taxpayers, and these days, high-rate taxpayer, you don't have to be rich to be a high-rate taxpayer. They've gone on those days. You can be an ordinary taxpayer just about to be at the highest rate. But encourage more people and stop having this issue that actually it's bad to make money. It's good to make money fairly and correctly and pay tax on it. But just merely taxing the rich because they're rich, no, you want them here, by all means be here, because we know they spend money, we know they create jobs. We're looking at some of the figures now for potential for non-doms going. And the thought is that potentially, out of the number of them, we're talking about a quarter, about 40,000 people we're talking about overall. If, to say, a quarter of them left, you're talking about about 3,000 jobs disappearing overall, and potentially a cost there of £4 billion of lost income. Right. You must be mad. But encourage people to be here and get rid of this idea that actually it's bad to be wealthy, it's bad to be creating money correctly and paying fair tax, and it's fine. If you pay too much tax, people go. It's quite normal.
Yeah, exactly.
So encourage people to actually make money and make the economy greater.
Exactly right. But there is this kind of, you know, hanging around feeling, you can't really miss it from the government, that they hate people that achieve. They hate people that make money. They hate business. They hate everything to do with, you know, profit. They all know anything. They know everything there is to know about the public sector, but nothing at all about the private sector. And even as he was saying it yesterday, that, you know, business confidence at an all-time high, a study came out late yesterday from the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, in which they said basically the problem with business confidence is the Business Confidence Monitor has dipped from what it was down in Q1 of this year from -3 to -4.2 in Q2. And all businesses are saying that the tax burden is a massively growing challenge and it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Now, see, that's a classic case. You need the business people to be confident to go and set up and get going. The largest employer in our country are small businesses, not large corporations. So we need small businesses to be set up. Last year, we set up over 4,000. I suspect the figure's going to be lower than that, significantly lower. Why? Because people, when they set up businesses, take a big bet. Sometimes it's their houses on the line, other bits on the line. I know we've had to go through a similar issue. And you take that risk on the basis that you'll be hopefully profitable at the end of it and make some money.
Right.
That's good, and you pay your tax into the system. Encourage people to make money fairly, encourage people and reward them for their success in doing so, and be a country which is actually positive towards it. We're almost going back to the 1960s, but I can just about remember them, the days of those socialist periods where making money was seen to be bad. Wealthy people were bad. And, we're going to be having the new socialist world where everything is brought down to the lowest common denominator. No, bring it up to the highest common denominator. It's the other way around. And actually encourage people to be here. Making money is good. It's not greed is good. That's not the issue. Making money is good. Making jobs is good. And that's how you actually create not just a good, but an exceptional country.
Yeah, you would think so. You would think that would all be a good idea, but they seem to be incapable of making it happen. Justin, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Justin Urquhart-Stewart there saying we are very much on board and on the line of travel to a recession. One more month of zero or minus growth, and that's where we're going to be. The UK economy shrinks for a second month in a row. That's the breaking news this morning. Contracted by 0.1% in May after a 0.3% contraction in April. So that's 0.4% down. Overall. Let's get a voice note from Joanne.
So where are we with all of these numbers that he keeps throwing out there, Starmer? The 360,000 new jobs. What jobs? Where? Where are they? Can somebody tell us where they are? The 120 billion investment. Where? What investment? Where's it gone? Where's that money going? Who are they? Who's putting it in? So I spoke to my hospital yesterday. I'm on a waiting list, which started in January, and back then I was told it was 51 weeks. And even if they push my appointment up for an urgent, it will only bring it 7 weeks forward. And I actually said to the lady on the telephone, what about these 4 million appointments? And she just laughed. And he just says something and we're supposed to accept that it's true. It's just not good enough. No one's calling them out. Audits, why? Why is no one saying the country's going down the plug hole? Why is no one calling them out on it? It's just not acceptable. Great show anyway, Mike. Thanks anyway. Bye.
Joanne, thanks very much indeed. Well, we're calling them out on it every single day. It gets exhausting. We've been asking you for suggestions for, 1940s-style food that Labour apparently wants to put into their restaurants. Imagine a Labour-run restaurant, £3 for a dinner. Here's one from Steve in Kimberley, Nottinghamshire. Morning, Mike. Keith's dinner menu, his diner menu, cabbage today, jam tomorrow. The Gauls of the Labour Party announcing this the day after their own hand-prepped state banquet. Well, I think that's a very good point. If they opened up state-run restaurants, you know what us Brits would get? The scraps and leftovers from the immigrants' tables in these hotels, says Karen in Taunton. And morning, Mike, says Cliff in Berkshire. The Starmer special, a large waffle served on a bed of tripe, asylum burger, free to asylum seekers, the bills added to paying customers' tab, and an NHS special, you order it, wait for an hour, then it's cancelled by the chef. Brilliant. Let's have some more of this. This is good. I like it a lot. Don't forget, Morning Glory's podcast is out every single weekday after the show. Around about 10:15, 10:30, you can get your hands on the best of what we've been doing throughout the course of the morning. It's 7:35. Coming up, so Bill Cash is here. Does Starmer want to drag us back into the European Union? Certainly bleeding looks like it. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 7:38. The breaking news this morning, the UK economy shrinks for a second month in a row, contracting by 0.1% in May. That's the second month in a row. And, of course, you know that if it happens 3 months in a row, it is technically called a recession, even if it is quite a small one. Great show, says Stephen. He says, so we already take immigrants through legal and safe routes, so this is in addition. Imagine a scenario where one criminal immigrant who has crossed over on a boat is then proposed to France in exchange for one going through a safe route. The French then say, no thanks, we don't want that criminal one, merci, and we end up keeping both immigrants. Macron has ever plays a game that serves France, and Starmer fell for it. Well, I mean, Starmer clearly is possibly the worst negotiator of all time in the history of negotiations, and a lot of people are worried that he's actually negotiating his way back into the European Union without possibly even realising it, or maybe as realising it. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. Well, I mean, the migrant deal, it's absolute guff. Everyone knows it's guff. And the thing what gets it even more, Mike, right, is that who thought it was a good idea to have the most hated man in England and the most hated man in France to stand there together, and then the French president lectures about the lies of Brexit? I mean, don't these people understand anything? That the English don't like to be lectured, certainly not by the French. As Kemi said, mate, these people are toast, mate, I'm telling you now. Oh, good God. Where do we go from here? Great show, Mike.
Sean, very good voice note. Thank you very much indeed. Well, certainly where we don't want to go is back into the arms of the people in Brussels, the European Union. And a man I'm sure who will agree with that is Sir Bill Cash, former Conservative MP, former chairman of the European Scrutiny Committee. Sir Bill, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Mike.
I mean, it's been a pretty ghastly week for those of us who think that it was a good idea to leave the European Union. We've been lectured to by not only Emmanuel Macron, but also by the King. We've had a state banquet. We've had a visit which lasted, in my view, way too long. They've come up with a deal at the end of it which is not worth the paper it's written on and won't work when it comes to the migrants. And we've even had Emmanuel Macron calling for us to rejoin the European Union at a speech at Mansion House to round levels of applause and all sorts of cheering. You know, what's going on?
Well, the truth is we've got absolutely diddly squat out of this deal. It's a complete disgrace. Yeah. But the real reason why all this is going on is simply because the French are determined to stop us from being able to get our own way and to impose on us. And the same applies to the EU. So watch this space, because they do not like the fact that we have the right to be able to override not only the European Charter of Human Rights, but also the European Court and international law if we pass a law in our own parliament. The trouble is that Keir Starmer and his Attorney General and his cabinet are completely determined to go ahead and actually destroy the credibility of the United Kingdom, and at the same time to ensure that the United Kingdom is subjugated to the European Union. That's what this has been all about. They've already completely ditched us over the fishermen. They dumped the fishermen overboard, as I said the last time I was on your programme. And now the French have come in, and Starmer has allowed this to happen. Yeah. It's an absolute outrage. And I do trust that all the people who are listening to this programme realise how humiliated he's trying to make the British people. It is a complete disgrace. I haven't seen a single newspaper who thinks that this has any chance of working at all. No. And the mayor of Calais this morning has, over in France, up in the area where this affects them, is against it as well. Right. It's a complete and total disaster.
It really is. I mean, even the European Union, in their wisdom, are probably not going to agree to it, because certainly the Greeks, the Spanish, the Italians, the Germans, they're not very keen on us sending people back there. They shouldn't be coming here in the first place.
Well, that's the point. And actually, there is an answer to this. And the answer lies in overriding international law. In this particular instance, in order to be able to ensure that we take control of our own laws. We've taken control. We can do it. And the Supreme Court will support the United Kingdom Parliament if the United Kingdom Parliament makes clear and unambiguous legislation. It's not just words, it's actually fact. That's what they did in the Rwanda judgment when they actually dismissed the appeal of an Iraqi national, because they said that the law that had been passed in relation to the claim that that man made was simply clear and unambiguous, and they had a duty to apply that law. It's as simple as that. And actually, Keir Starmer refuses to accept any kind of interference with international law. His Attorney General, who I called on the Daily Telegraph to be replaced, is saying the same thing. And they are making absolute mayhem with our own country. It's an outrage.
It really is, because I think the last time you and I spoke, Sir Bill, we talked about this kind of ever closer alignment that Keir Starmer's been doing, this resetting of our relationship with the EU, where somehow they're now going to be back in charge of our food standards and all sorts of other things that we voted to leave behind, didn't we?
Yeah, and the fact is that Starmer got less votes in this last general election than Jeremy Corbyn did. He has no mandate for any of this. And he is taking on, as I said in an article I wrote the other day, he is actually running a vendetta against the British people and against the constitutional arrangements of this country. He knows perfectly well he could pass a law which would deal with this, and the Supreme Court would support him. But we're getting absolutely diddly squat for the £800 million that we've poured into France on this. You only have to see the stuff on television yesterday to see these boats coming in and these policemen standing there and then walking off with them. It's a complete disaster and there's no justification for it. So I am absolutely outraged, and so are millions of other people in this country. And the reality is that there is an answer to it. I've given it to you. It's there for the taking, but they will not do it because Starmer is absolutely obsessed and so is the Attorney General and his cabinet, with international law. I'm not saying that international law doesn't play a role in certain areas of our world affairs, but in this particular instance, it is absolutely working against the national interest, and we've got to put our national interest first. And by the way, in these other countries like France, they can't make the changes. This is the interesting point. They cannot make the changes because their constitutions are written, and they cannot change those constitutions all over Europe. In Germany, for example, international law under the constitution takes precedence over domestic German law. In England, it does not. And that is the advantage we have of Brexit. So when Macron says that we were sold a lie over Brexit, it's completely the other way around. He's the one who's misleading people, and he must have been told in England they can actually change the law and they can override international law. We have a different constitutional arrangement. And by the way, we're unique in this, and that is the great advantage of Brexit, which is that we can make our own laws, we can make our own trading relationships all over the world, and the reality is this government is taking us into a deeper and deeper pit every single day it sits there in Parliament.
Yeah, it's an absolute shambles. It's terrible and it's disgusting. And so many people are not happy about it, as are you. Sir Bill Cash, thank you very much indeed. Former Conservative MP, former chairman, of course, of the European Scrutiny Committee. One from John in Whitstable. He says, how about this for the state-run cafe? Hostages and chips. Bracket sausages, obviously. Let's get a voice note from Kitty on Sick Note Britain.
Good morning, Mike and team. Kitty from Kent here. So I've just been signed off work for the first time in my life. So I've been working maybe 30 odd years, and it's for a valid reason. And my doctor, to their credit, you have to actually go and see them before you get signed off. I know people who work in surgeries where they do it over the phone. But when I went to see my doctor, I explained what was going on. And then I said I'd like to be off for 2 weeks. And she said to me, do you want 5 or 6 weeks? And I said, no, definitely not. And so she said, oh, well, I'll sign you off for 2 weeks, but at the end of it, you can just do an e-consult and take further time off, which I'm not going to do. I'm not intending to do. I know what's wrong and I know what I need, but I just think that it's frightening because I could be off work for 6 weeks and not only would I suffer really in the long run, but also my work suffers. And where's the responsibility of people? Anyway, have a lovely day.
Kitty, thanks very much indeed. Hope you feel better. Hope you're not signed off for too long. But you're absolutely right. You know, the system feeds into people's laziness because I've spoken to doctors. You've heard them here on the air saying it. Dean Eggett's one of them. And I don't want to pick on him, but, you know, he talks to us very regularly. He's from the Doncaster area. He runs a GP surgery up there. He's admitted to me that he runs, he'll certainly give people sick notes without even seeing them. He'll send an email. Somebody will send him an email and say, I fancy taking a week off or 2 weeks off. And he'll just go, yeah, OK, we'll sign you off for that. And Kitty there saying, you know, they asked her if she wanted to be off for 5 or 6 weeks. That's the problem. They're going to clamp down on it, they say, in the government. Wes Streeting says he's going to clamp down on it. But are they really going to? What's wrong with a nation of people who would rather not go to work because they can skive? I don't think that's right at all. 0344 499 1000. Coming up, we're going to speak about the NHS and the strikes and all the rest of it with the BMA. Martin Gower is here.
What you have to do as a minister is to sit with a situation where the law is often not particularly clear. You've got to apply the facts to the law, and that's the bit that everybody misunderstands. Law doesn't... You said a minute ago about how the law is not a, you know, a tablet of stone. That's exactly right. It gives you principles. You have to apply the facts to the principles, but as a minister, you've also got to apply politics and your democratic mandate, and that's what this will stop you doing.
Yeah, and indeed, and the right of a government to, with their majority in Parliament, to change the law.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Wayne in Essex says this Labour restaurant is an all-you-can-eat, open 24/7. However, there was a one-in, one-out policy. As soon as the restaurant was full and there was a queue outside, they would pick someone at random to leave, no matter if they'd started their food or not. Then let a new punter in. It's OK, though, as the one that was removed just joined the back of the queue outside, so they could come back in and start their meal again. The restaurant is called The Pilot. Unfortunately, it's not got great TripAdvisor reviews. That's brilliant. Wayne, very nice. Very good indeed. One in, one out. Yeah, take somebody at random out of the restaurant, chuck them outside, and they join the queue, come back in, and get 2 dinners for the price of 1. Nice dessert for the Labour Cafe, says Tony. A chocolate teapot. Yeah, Absolutely, and not about as much use as one as well. Let's talk, of course, to Martin Gower, former NHS chair. We're getting closer and closer now to July the 25th, which is the date at which the junior doctors are going to go on strike for 5, count them, days, ruining at the very minimum 200,000 operations and procedures in the NHS. Before we speak to Martin, let me just play you this, Martin, from resident doctor, I call her a junior doctor actually, Basha Mukherjee. This was yesterday.
Well, for my records, I'm actually going to be, I'm going to stop being a resident doctor by the end of the month. So these strikes won't really affect me. I'm actually not even going to be striking because
But you voted to strike, though, it says here.
I voted for striking, yes.
But you're not going to strike.
My reasons are different to just the numbers per se. My reasons are that the NHS continues to be a very chronically understaffed environment, and we need to make it lucrative and incentivized for doctors to stay in the NHS, to come into the NHS.
But you're not going to stay in it?
Well, I'm considering my options because even the pays for GPs, salaried GPs, is not great at the moment, and there are better options across the world. I could be doing the same job anywhere else in the world.
Okay, well then why not do that then instead of causing problems here? I'm slightly puzzled as to why you're no longer going to be a junior doctor, but you voted to strike as one. Yeah, I mean, that was a rather bizarre point that she made. Martin Gower's here. Martin, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So,
here we go again.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem as though many of the people who are voting to strike as junior doctors, one, are not actually junior doctors, and two, seem to be more about just disrupting than actually improving the system. Because, you know, Wes Streeting said quite openly, we haven't got the money. He thinks it's very, very bad news that they're trying to disrupt the NHS at a time when it's hanging by a thread, his words. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I suspect that, I mean, the government that we have isn't actually renowned for its negotiating skills.
No.
So I rather suspect that what will happen, there will be some sort of compromise cobbled together. I understand that Wes Streeting is looking at the possibility of reducing the NHS's contribution to pensions. Now, it is at a ludicrous level anyway, but I think for the junior doctors, there may be, he's looking at some kind of deal that would reduce their pension contributions in the short term, but would actually give them more pay that they want. I mean, look, the BMA is really quite a nasty, pernicious organisation, in my opinion.
And I see that Robert Winston has just announced that he's quit it because of their dangerous strike.
And I think because of his profile, he's quite able to be quite public about that. But I believe there are quite a few doctors now who are no longer members of the BMA. I mean, I think they've shamed the profession, to be honest. And when I see these giggling, laughing, presumably junior doctors on picket lines, it all seems they're out for a bit of a jolly. I mean, the pictures are showing at the moment are symptomatic of that. I just think that we have a weak government in terms of resisting union pressure. I think they see the opportunity to take advantage of that. And of course, it goes back to the fact that as a massive employer, let's be honest, a nationalized industry, you've got the situation where the union has enormous power and is quite prepared to wield it without any regard whatever to the impact that that has on patients.
No, exactly. What do you make of this story in the Telegraph today, which says that Wes Streeting's opened the door to cutting junior doctors' pension pots in order to raise their pay? Because one of the things they never mention, they always bang on about how much they get paid an hour because they make it sound worse than it actually is, but they never mention the massive pension that they've got.
No, and the contributions that the NHS has to make out of the us taxpayers' contributions to the NHS are absolutely massive if you compare them to the private sector. I mean, these are pensions based on what you were earning when you left the service and the number of years in the service. So it's based on a final salary, as we used to call them, final salary schemes. Some of us who are a little bit older are lucky enough to have had that from previous private sector employers. But these days, they're just simply not doing that. And I think that this is not only in the NHS, but throughout the public sector. The cost of public sector pension contributions that we all have to pay through our tax system is absolutely crazy. And it needs somebody with the guts and the power and the ability to use that power to stop it. But this could be a route. But the BMA are going to resist it, Mike. You know, they're going to say, oh, no, no, our pension, this is why people join the service. We're not prepared to negotiate at all on pensions. And there's very little that anybody can do. If the government are not going to pass a law that makes it an essential service, that therefore people can't go on strike like the police or the army, they're not going to do that. And so I think we're just going to see this as a sort of annual effort, certainly for the next few years, to grab whatever they can.
Yeah, right. Well, because whatever happens, whenever the standoff begins, you know, the junior doctors seem to be saying, you know, if West Streeting will simply offer us what we want, then we won't go on strike. But he's not going to do that. So there will be an impasse at some point. There will be frustration. There will be people whose appointments are cancelled, whose entire lives have been put on hold, not just for 1 week, but for probably 2 months or maybe 3 months afterwards as well. And so, you know, and the public don't have any sympathy for them. You know, they didn't have much sympathy for them last time. This time, it's completely evaporated.
Well, at the moment, West Streeting is saying he's going to resist it, but only time will tell. This government's resistance to union pressure over the past year has not been that particularly great. We look at the train drivers, we look at the civil service, quite a lot of other public sector workers. They've been pretty happy just to give in, largely give in. They had a 25% increase over 2 years. And what is actually quite wrong, Mike, is that they use the RPI, a measure of inflation, to say how much they need, rather than CPI, which is what everyone else uses. Right. And that, of course, if you look back to 2015 or wherever, you'll see that they haven't lost the level of pay that they say they have. So I just think that they're very, very powerful. There's not a lot we can do. We have a structure of our healthcare system that no other countries have. This doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. And consequently, they can see they are very, very powerful.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely shocking what they're doing, though. People are absolutely livid about it. And if you are waiting for an operation, we'd love to hear from you, because I'd love to know whether it's been cancelled. We got a few people yesterday telling us their stories. We'd like to hear some more. Coming up in the next hour, John Rentoul joins us. We'll find out what his take is on the New Deal, one in, one out, which, of course, isn't what it is. Much more after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment, because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, now, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 8. It is, of course, Friday, July the 11th. We are here, ladies and gentlemen, for the duration, all the way through until 10 o'clock. Alex Brooks will be in after that. Morning Glory podcast, remember, is available every single weekday morning around about 10:15, 10:30, as soon as the show is finished. If you miss any of it, just know that you will be able to catch up with the best bits of it every single weekday. Coming up tonight, of course, it's Plank of the Week at 7 p.m. You don't want to miss that either. Piers Morgan has tweeted about the state of affairs with Emmanuel Macron and the deal, one in, one out, as it's being called by the media. It's not one in, one out. What a joke is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Piers Morgan says President Trump would end this madness by slapping a 1,000% tariff on all French imports to the UK until Macron caved and stopped the boats leaving France. Something would have to be done. I mean, even Greece has managed to compound their safety by saying, basically, we will stop all illegal migrants coming to our shores from North Africa by arresting them immediately when they land and taking them to a detention centre that we're building on Crete. And shortly thereafter, we will be evacuating that detention centre and taking them back to Libya, from whence they came, with armed escorts. And that surely is the only way to do it. Breaking news this morning, the UK economy shrinks for a second month in a row, causing fears of a recession, because all you need is 3 months, of course, and it's called a recession. It contracted by 0.1% in May after a 0.3% contraction in April. So, you know, Rachel Reeves, so far, nowhere to be seen this morning. We haven't heard anything from her. So let's hear from all of you and see what you've been saying this morning.
Morning, Mike. Phil from Peterborough. An absolutely beautiful Friday morning, but I'm angry, Mike. I'm angry.
It's Adrian from East Sussex. Lovely morning here, and your show has just started. I'm sure it'll be a great one.
Morning, Mike. Joan from Norfolk.
Good morning, Mike. Just regarding Wish You Were Here, Never Here, Free Gear, Care. 1 year, Mike. Can't believe it. In 1 year. And I tell you what, Mike, in 1 year, he's done jack.
Yes, I think that's a pretty fair summation of what has happened. I mean, this one out scheme is completely and utter balderdash. We'll tell you exactly why. And John Rental's here. We'll find out what he makes of it all. Chief political commentator at The Independent. I mean, Keir Starmer might as well go down to Cornwall, where, according to The Sun, they found a unicorn skull near Arthur's Castle. You might as well go and give it a rub and see if that helps. 0344 499 1000. This is, of course, Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Now, it is Friday, of course, so you know what we like to do on a Friday. We like to play out all of those little mistakes that we've made over the course of the week. Here's one from Julie Hartley-Brewer.
Was dismissed after taking down a violent youth in possession of a knife who'd assaulted an old man because he used the F word and called him a...
Language. Apologies for that language, sorry.
Probably okay, but I didn't...
No, don't say it again, please. I apologise to anybody for offended by that language.
The female dog. But anyway, the point...
Beep. Anyway, let's get a voice note from Kate.
Morning, Mike. It's Kate from Leeds. I mean, Keir Starmer. I mean, he's appalling. He's an absolute joke, that man. He's ruining our country. It's getting out of hand, and that stupid man of a Prime Minister looking into the camera and just dripping lies out of his mouth. I can't stand him. Anyway, good show, Mike. It's just so upsetting, really. Thank you.
Kate, listen, I feel your pain. Thank you very much indeed. A lot of people not happy this morning, I have to say. We're talking as well about the state-run restaurant that apparently Labour would like to introduce. £3 for the meal. Jimmy and James in Liverpool says the menu will be spam and chips, egg, beans and spam, beans, eggs, chips and spam, and spam, 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 spam and spam. Derek in Newhall in Derbyshire, on the state restaurants, they already have them in place. Free school meals, just a bring a parent day. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of good ideas coming in for the menu. We shall see. Let's talk to John Rental, a man who likes a bit of socialism once in a while on a Friday. John, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Well, I feel like we haven't spoken for a while. I don't know. It seems like more than a week, but it's not been. It's been another sort of pretty awful week for Keir Starmer. He's had his state visit from Emmanuel Macron. Lots of people wondering what that was all about, really. And we've ended up with a sort of rather mediocre deal, which for some reason people in the media are calling one in, one out, when it clearly isn't one in, one out.
You're talking the country down again, Mike?
No, not at all. I'm talking Keir Starmer down. The country's fine, but the country is being stewarded in the wrong direction in the view of not only me, but lots of other people. And the economy's contracted again, so we're going to be in a recession this time next month.
Sounds to me like you're talking the country down.
No, just telling the truth, John.
The economy's flat. I mean, it's random variation, really. We shouldn't get too excited about 1 month.
Yeah, but whenever it goes up by 0.1%, we get Rachel Reeves banging on about what good news it is, and she hasn't.
Yeah,
said
no, but you don't
today.
get me banging on about what good news it is.
No, but I'm not criticising you, John. I'm criticising the government.
Good. Well, so you'll be praising the government for making progress towards a return scheme with France, which I think is quite an impressive achievement.
No, because it's not an achievement. I'm afraid you fall into the trap of thinking that announcing something is an achievement. You know, they haven't made any inroads whatsoever because, one, Keir Starmer won't explain how it's going to work when he was asked to do so, and two, nobody really believes it will work, and it won't.
Well, no, it might. It might.
It might work.
If it is approved by the EU,
which it won't be.
Yeah, well, there is that rather big if.
It won't be. They don't want it.
At the start of this sentence in praise of Keir Starmer, there is a big if. But if it does work, it is more than the Conservatives could ever achieve. Rishi Sunak tried to get this agreement several times and failed, and it is more than Reform could do. So we should give Starmer credit for that.
We don't know. I mean, you can't really. I'm slightly worried about your sanity, John. If you want to give credit for something, one, that hasn't happened, and two, that nobody else has tried.
I'm giving credit. I mean, there is an agreement between the UK and France. So that's a substantive bit of progress.
Well, not really.
If it goes ahead, it will be more than the Conservatives achieved, and it'll be more than Reform could ever hope to do.
I don't know why you keep mentioning Reform. Reform are not in power, right? They haven't had a chance to do anything yet, so you don't know what they can do. You might say, maybe hang on, you're saying if it works, it's great, but you're saying that Reform couldn't make anything work without actually knowing what they might do.
Yes, I do. I mean, I know what Reform's policy is, and the reason I take Reform seriously is because they're in the lead in the
I'm not saying you shouldn't take them seriously, but you can't criticise them for something they haven't done.
I can criticise their policies as announced, and their policy on small boats, as far as I can make out, is to take migrants back to France and drop them off on the beaches, violating
to turn the boats around,
French waters. Yeah, violating French waters. And in effect going to war with France. I just don't think that's going to work.
Well, you might as well say that France have been going to war with us then, because they've been violating in British waters, haven't they?
No, they haven't. But,
well, they have, because they escort the boats into British waters, and then the British border force takes over and brings the boats into to dock in Dover.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's not really going to war, is it?
Well, it would be going to war if British boats went into French waters and dropped these people.
How is it not doing the same thing if the French are dropping them in British waters then?
Because they don't go into British waters.
Yes, they do.
They escort them to the halfway line.
They escort them into... Well, the halfway line is where British waters begin.
As soon as they've crossed the halfway line, they're our responsibility. I agree that the situation...
Yeah, because they're in British waters.
Yes, but the French don't go into the British waters.
Yeah, they do. They escort the boats into British waters. That's what happens, and that's why it's so ridiculous, because the boats are not actually ever on their own. They're never taking the dangerous crossing. Occasionally things go wrong and people drown. Yeah. But at the end of the day, most of the time, they're escorted by French patrol boats into British waters, and then they're picked up by border force, and then they're brought to Britain.
I wasn't
That's
aware
how it happens.
That the French boats actually go into British waters.
They do.
If they do, we should
declare war on them.
We should take them to the International Court.
Yeah, but this is the whole hypocrisy of it all, right? I mean, we've just seen this week Greece managing to do a far better deal, sorting out their own country, saying that if anybody comes to Greek shores illegally on boats coming from North Africa, they will immediately arrest the people on those boats, put them in a detention centre they're building in Crete, and then deport them and take them back to Libya, basically with an armed escort from their own navy. And that's what Greece has done. And that seems to me to be a far more sensible and workable arrangement than what we've just done.
Have they actually done that, though? Have they actually taken any migrants back to Libya?
No, because they've only just announced that that's what they're going to do.
Oh, right. So they've just announced it as well.
Right. Yeah,
so,
but
that's no good either.
Well, no, because it's a far better plan, I would suggest to you, than the one that we have. Because one, we don't understand. Nobody understands yet how. If it's because it's basically 17 in and 1 out, right? Nobody knows how they're going to pick the one that goes out. Nobody understands who any of these people are. Nobody knows.
But that's why it's worth doing a pilot scheme, isn't it, to try and work out all these.
Well, no, because if you want to do a pilot scheme, why not do what Greece are doing, which is far more sensible? Make a detention centre a place where they are taken to, and then deported. That's surely a far better and more workable solution.
Well, yeah, it's building huge detention centres all over the south of England is not, that would be quite expensive. And the difficulty.
Well, I mean, I think we can forget about how expensive it is.
The deportations, isn't it? I mean, that's the difficult bit, and that's why this is important, because this actually gets a returns agreement with France.
Yeah, but we're returning.
We can actually deport some of them back to France, and now that is progress. And
but John, you said it yourself. It's only progress if it works, and it won't work because the EU is probably going to block it.
Well, we'll see. All
right. Well, we can make a bet if you like, and if you're a betting man.
If they don't block it, it will be progress, won't it, Mike?
Well, that's a bit like saying if the train that's currently stuck on the track moves, it will be great. But unfortunately, it's blocked.
You go on talking the country down, Mike. Well done.
No, it's nothing to do with talking the country down. It's just being realistic. It's not about talking the country down. It's about a problem that we have had for many years, which you for a long time didn't even acknowledge because a lot of people on the left didn't want to.
That is absolutely not true.
No,
Mike.
you didn't.
I've always said that this is a huge problem and needs to be dealt with.
You and I have been talking for many years,
in the most emphatic way.
You and I have been talking for many years, and for a long time, the Labour government, the current Labour Party anyway, certainly didn't wish to acknowledge that it was a problem. And most people in the Labour Party said that we should have absolutely open borders and we should allow people to come here who needed to seek solace here. I will give you credit to go if you go all the way back to Tony Blair, who had a much more realistic view of this. But the current Starmer kind of regimen did not, because they preferred to take the view that we should be a sort of sanctuary state for people coming here from all over the world.
Keir Starmer's trying to do something about it
now.
But
he is now, but for years he didn't.
For years,
come on. John,
all the time he's been Prime Minister, he's been trying
Yes, but for years when he was the leader of the opposition, he and his cohorts in the legal profession blocked every single thing the Tories tried to do. And you know that as well as I do.
I fully accept that.
And let's not forget, he even wrote letters to get people dragged off planes who were being deported, who later it turned out to be murderers.
Yes, but we welcome the sinner that repenteth, and Keir Starmer has been trying to do things since he's been Prime Minister.
But what that would suggest to me, though, is his heart's not really in it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, if he's actually able to deliver this, then that is more than the Conservatives managed, and if their heart was in it,
well, the Conservatives
they were just incompetent.
Well, no, the Conservatives made this lot make the Conservatives look very competent. This lot are so incompetent.
That's absolutely not true.
It is.
The Rwanda scheme, which the Conservatives think was such a brilliant deterrent, that had a capacity for a few hundred people. This scheme, if it works, is 50 people a week. I mean that's
2,600
more.
It's 2,600 a year.
I know it's not enough, but it is
not
far
very many.
Rwanda. So if Rwanda was a deterrent, then this is even more of a deterrent.
Well, no, I don't think so, because one, nobody knows how it's going to work. Two, something like...
Well, nobody knew how Rwanda was going to work, Mike.
Well, I was never one who was particularly in favour of Rwanda, but the point is that you have to have some kind of deterrent. My version of what a deterrent would be to stop making it so nice for people when they get here. Stop putting them in hotels. Stop giving them...
Hostile environment.
Make it a hostile environment, absolutely. Yeah, because that's where we are. There's too many people here.
That's not a solution. People will still want to come here.
They will not.
The English language.
It's worked in America, John.
What has? The hostile environment?
The hostile environment, yeah. People have stopped coming over the border in Mexico in massive numbers because they realise that if they do so, they will be immediately sent home and they'll never be able to get into America ever again. so they don't come anymore.
Well, yeah, it is extraordinary how that has happened. Just because Donald Trump has said some sharp things.
Well, no, but it's worked though. They don't any longer have the crisis on the border that they did have before he got in.
Well, I know it's extraordinary, and he hasn't actually done anything.
Well,
which is
no, he has. He started deporting people and
he has started deporting. Yes,
and he started arresting
people to the wrong countries.
Well, the point is he started arresting people and sending them back home and putting them on planes. And when people in those countries said we're not taking them back, he said in that case we're going to tariff you to death until such time as you agree. And now they agree. So now the hostile environment has worked. Surely.
Well, yes. That's
yes.
not a hostile environment. That is a returns.
Well, that's a proper return scheme. That's where you're actually returning people, as soon as they arrive. This scheme is not going to do that. And what's the point?
Well, you don't know, Mike. Supposing it does.
It won't, because I've been doing this a long time, John. I've been watching how it all works, and I think you're being incredibly optimistic, and I take my hat off to you for being so. But I don't think your optimism will turn out to be well placed, because at the end of the day, the people smuggling gangs are very, very clever people, and they will find a way to continue to put these people on boats and continue to bring them in, because they'll know that only 1 in 17 of them will get sent back.
No, but once you've proved the concept of being able to send them back, you can expand the scheme.
No, but do you really think that the people who are going to be, say, for example, targeted to be sent back are not going to get a human rights lawyer on their case, and who is not going to say, I'm sorry, you can't send him back because, of this reason or that reason or the other reason, he's got speech impediment? That's going to happen.
Yeah, that is absolutely the problem, and that's why it's worth doing a pilot scheme in order to see if you can make that work.
Well, you know what's going to happen? They do a pilot scheme to make out to say in order to work out that it doesn't work, and then they'll be back to square one. Right?
Well,
you know that.
We'll see about that. I mean, but the thing is that you've got to try everything, haven't you, Mike? I mean, this is worth trying, because if it doesn't work, it is progress in the right direction.
I agree that you don't have to try everything. You have to try something that's going to work, and I think we've just both agreed that the Donald Trump method seems to work already. So why not just copy that?
Well, the Donald Trump method seems to involve breaking international law and sending people who are completely innocent back to the wrong country. I'm not sure we want to do that, but
you can take that view if you want, but in my view, anyone who comes into this country illegally is not completely innocent, because they've already broken the law by coming here illegally.
Right. Okay. No, but he sent someone. He claimed that someone was a violent criminal, and sent him back to the wrong country.
Mistakes can happen when you're dealing with massive numbers of people coming. And you can't tell me that there are people coming into this country who are not criminals, because you don't know. And because we don't know who they are, and what we do know.
I completely agree that they should be returned. But I mean, it's not simple, and to pretend that it is, I think, is to give people false hope.
I don't think it's simple at all. But I think it's.
Well, you said it's simple because Trump's done it.
No, I said that his method has worked, and you agreed with that. So I mean, I don't know what you're now disagreeing with, but if you take his operation and you take his approach, there's a high likelihood that it will work. I mean,
I think we should be trying to do something similar to that. We should be trying to return as many people as possible.
Exactly. Thank you for agreeing with me. Let's have a listen to what David Bolt said. He's the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. He said this a little while ago.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things. The challenge was to change the sort of risk-reward ratio for those people that are involved in organised immigration crime, and that was really quite a difficult thing to achieve, because it's relatively low cost, relatively low risk for those the perpetrators, and highly profitable. So I'm not sure I feel very optimistic about the ability to smash the gangs.
So what's happened to that, by the way? Smash the gangs? Is that gone now?
I don't know who that guy is, but he's absolutely right.
He's a very, very well-connected man. He used to work for MI5, and he used to be in charge of Border Force. He's now a sort of consultant on immigration. I didn't even know he existed until about 2 weeks ago, but he's the independent chief inspector of Borders and Immigration, and he seems to know what he's talking about.
Well, why isn't he in charge of it now? I mean, he sounds like an extrely sensible chap.
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, instead we've got the border commander, haven't we? Who nobody's heard from. Lives in Finland.
No, I think he was told to stop living in Finland.
Stop living in Finland.
No, but smashing the gangs is you're absolutely right. That is a ridiculous slogan.
Yes.
And a completely ineffective policy, because it's not the gangs are not the problem. The gangs are responding to the demand, which is. Well,
they're enabling it, aren't they, as well?
But the point is that if you smash one gang, another one will
exactly.
Another
well,
one
it's like the war on drugs,
place.
Isn't it? You might as well say
smashing the gangs completely pointless. What David Bolt said there is absolutely right. You have to tackle the risk-reward ratio from the point of view of the would-be migrants to make it not worth their trying.
Right.
And that's partly what Keir Starmer is now trying to do with this return scheme. So we are actually
except
moving.
He's not really, because
making progress at last for the first time. We're actually making progress.
No, we're not. We haven't made any progress. He's signed a deal with Emmanuel Macron, which probably won't get passed by the European Union, so they'll probably oppose it, and it probably won't result in anybody getting. In fact, I'll make a bet with you right now. I bet nobody gets sent back. It'll be like Rwanda, you know.
Yeah, well, it will. And the other thing that's a bit like Rwanda is that it's all going to happen within weeks. They say.
Yeah,
the Rwanda planes were always going to take off within weeks.
Yeah, but let's not forget. To be fair,
I share your scepticism about that.
But
Mike.
to be fair,
my point is that if it works, it is progress, and we ought to wait and see.
Yeah, I think waiting and seeing is a very wise policy, much better than the one you started with, which is it's a good idea. But here's where we are. The reason why Rwanda didn't work is because of the massive opposition to it from everybody who was from the European Court of Human Rights down to Keir Starmer, down to everybody in the Labour Party and all sorts of human rights lawyers. They just kept kiboshing it. Every time somebody was going to be deported, they were pulled off a plane. It happened all the time. But suddenly all of those human rights guys seemingly have sort of faded off into the background. Nobody knows where they've gone. But, should we end up with the economy shrinking for the second month in a row? Because we will technically be in I know how stickler you are for the rules. We will technically be in a recession if it goes down another 0.1% next month, which is still bad news for Rachel Reeves, whichever way you cut it.
No, I mean, it's not good news. That is absolutely true. We should, but as I said at the start, we shouldn't get too excited about 1 month's figures, especially as it's 0.1%. So
yeah, but we've lost 69,000 jobs in hospitality in the past couple of months. We've lost, I think, 275,000 jobs overall. We've got business confidence at an all-time low, despite what Keir Starmer said in Prime Minister's Questions the other day. So all the indicators are, I'm afraid, going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, it's not great, but I haven't heard the alternative policy that would be better.
Well, you could try reversing the. I mean, most of it is self-inflicted by Rachel Reeves.
No, that's absolutely not true. Where would you get the money from if you reverse that employers' national insurance?
Well. First of all, the money that they've got from that hasn't made any difference to the economy. It hasn't created growth. What it's done is created the absolute opposite of growth. It's meant that people have been made redundant. It's meant that businesses are not putting any money. Yes, it is true.
It's propped up the
69,000 people in hospitality. No, 69,000 people in hospitality have lost their jobs as a direct result of the national insurance increase.
You can't say it's a direct result.
Yes, I can.
It's not good. But the point is, where would you get the money from for the NHS and for public services?
Well, the NHS doesn't need any more money. The NHS doesn't need any more money for a start. Because even the NHS have admitted whenever they get extra money, it just disappears. They got 30 billion just a couple of months ago, and the NHS said.
Good luck selling that message, Mike.
Well, the point is that it's a behemoth which cannot be continually fed with money because money doesn't seem to make any difference to it.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, Nigel Farage, who used to hold that view, seems to have backed off it because he's realised it's extremely unpopular. So he's now back to being committed to an NHS on the current tax-funded model.
He was never against that.
The point is, if you're going to make that work, it will need money.
Yeah, well, yeah, but we were supposed to be cutting back on the civil service. That hasn't happened. That was where the money was meant to come from. They were supposed to be cutting back on the welfare situation. That hasn't happened because Keir Starmer was too weak to actually convince his own backbenchers to do it. So he's lost so many opportunities to save money, you know, that by punishing business, that is not the way out of a recession. Punishing business will just result that we go further into a recession, and that's the problem.
Well, yeah, that is the problem. But the problem is that that Keir Starmer inherited an impossible financial position from.
Not really. No, the economy was in a much better place in June of last year. Yes, it was. In June of 2020. No, that's not nonsense.
Heading for a brick wall.
No, not at all.
The incoming government had to raise taxes or cut spending.
Do you have any idea how much money the Labour government has borrowed since they've been in?
Yeah, vast amounts, because they've had a terrible inheritance. It doesn't matter how much.
No, you don't. If you've had a terrible inheritance, you don't suddenly borrow the same amount every single month. They've borrowed
if you
about
inherit the public finances in the state they were in, which was that the government was spending far more money than it was raising.
Yeah, so they've decided
you have a problem.
So they've decided to cure that problem by spending even more.
That's what they've done. And raising taxes.
No, they've raised taxes, but they've spent even more money. They borrowed £20 billion last month and the month before and the month before.
Mike, our prisons were full to bursting, and the Conservatives were about to have to release.
They're still full to bursting.
Yes. And so
they haven't done anything.
More money needs to be spent on the prisons to start off with.
Yeah, but they're not spending money on prisons.
You can't cut money there. And so the incoming government had to raise taxes in order to keep things on an even keel.
They didn't have to raise taxes. They could have saved.
That is unfortunate, but I haven't heard an alternative policy apart from oh well, we should just spend less government money. I mean that is just too easy, and you know it.
Well, you have to cut spending, and the government knew that. They came in. They said that they were going to cut spending, but every single time they try to cut it, they get stopped from cutting it because they're not strong enough. They have no leadership, and they have no ability to convince their own party to go along with it. That's why they're failing. That's why the economy is going further down the tubes, because they can't even cut spending. All they can do is spend more money, like every other bleeding Labour government we've ever had.
No, but cutting spending is extremely difficult.
Yeah, but it has to be done. Well, they said they were doing the hard things first, didn't they?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, some of their rhetoric has not served them well. But they have inherited an appallingly difficult situation from the Conservatives, so it's not surprising we're in the position we're in.
Yeah, exactly right. And if you're looking for an alternative, I can just point you to the Growth Commission, which is not something that I particularly endorse. But
Liz Truss.
They've just been in touch with me. They've just been in touch with me to say that the latest GDP figures should prompt spending cuts, not tax rises.
Yeah, I've seen the press release. If we take advice from Liz Truss, then we really are in trouble, Mike, as you know.
We are in trouble, and it's not anybody's fault but a Labour Party, I'm afraid. It's nothing to do with Liz Truss. She didn't even have a chance to take us this far down the tubes. But there we are. John, a pleasure as ever to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Have a very good weekend. Let's get a voice note from Louise.
I might be a bit thick, but if all the migrants that are coming here have been allowed to come here because they've got family ties, the ones that are allowed to stay and you know, get citizenship and all that, then why don't we make them live with the families that they purport to belong to, make the families pay for them? Then the housing crisis would be solved, the hotels issue would be solved, the family would be policing their own people and paying for them. So then we would save one hell of a lot of money also. Or is it just me? Am I just thick?
You're definitely not, Louise, but you certainly got some good ideas there. Yeah, make them pay for it. I mean, that would be a start, at least, wouldn't it? 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's 8:30. Jane says, oh dear, John Rentoul, he's the only man in the UK that thinks the new migrant scheme is going to work. What happened to smashing the gangs? That was going to be the answer. Yeah, they're smuggling guns. Yes, I'm afraid not. We'll be back after this.
that what is occurring here is a very real increase in mental health problems in particular, and there is, now almost unquestionable evidence that is a genuine rise in poor mental health. It is not down to over-reporting. The most recent adult psychiatric morbidity survey, which is like the kind of gold standard assessment of what's going on in mental health, concluded that categorically. So we have to start talking about the underlying causes.
But is that something a government can do about, do anything about?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:33. Sorry, no, it's not. It's 8:33. What am I talking about? I was trying to throw myself back a couple of hours there. We're here until 10, of course. Alex Phillips will be along. Coming up, Lana Hempsall, Conservative Councillor for Norfolk, joins us on the Motability scheme and how easy it is to get a car for all sorts of ridiculous reasons. The UK economy shrinks for a second month in a row, contracting by 0.1% in May and after a 0.3% contraction in April. It's been pointed out to me that apparently we won't be in a recession if it's a 3-monthly decline. It will only be in a recession if we are in a 2-quarterly decline. I'm pretty sure that Justin Urquhart-Stewart told us if it's another month it will go into recession. But anyway, certainly not in a good place. Here's what Rachel Reeves has to say today. While today's figures are disappointing, I'm determined to kickstart economic growth and deliver on that promise. Yes. Hard to fight back the tears on that one, really, isn't it? It's not going well, is it? No matter which way you cut it. This from Glenn in Leeds. I ruptured my Achilles tendon on the 4th of July last year. Ironic, I know. It was misdiagnosed for 6 months. I've now got to wait 1 year to see a consultant, and any treatment from that will take about another year, so I might be back at work in 2028. Crikey! While I can't claim benefits, I don't qualify for PIP. And that's amazing. Meanwhile, so many people are qualifying for Motability and getting cars for free. Here's what Kerry Badenoch has to say.
The Motability scheme is a perfect example of what's going wrong with the current system. It was initially set up to help disabled people get around. Now 90% of its cars now have no adaptations whatsoever. That's not what it was designed for. People are qualifying with conditions like drug misuse, ADHD, obesity. The assessment system surely can't have been designed with that intention, and we cannot allow it to continue for a moment longer.
Yes, and after some of the stories that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, it's been quite ridiculous, hasn't it? Because it's very obvious that people are getting cars under false pretences. Let's talk to Lana Hempsall, Conservative Councillor for Norfolk. Lana, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Hello.
Hello. It seems incredible, doesn't it, that people have been able to manipulate the system. I mean, we've got Glenn from Leeds there saying he can't claim benefits even though he's got no ability to go to work. His Achilles tendon's gone. He's going to wait 2 years to get to work. And then we hear other stories about somebody with acne or some kind of food problem or obesity getting a free car.
That is true, because the Motability scheme, which was set up in 1978 with admirable intentions, is now, so qualifying for the Motability scheme is now predicated on being eligible for the mobility component of PIP. And once you are eligible for that, you can apply to the Motability scheme for one of their vehicles.
Yes. But the trouble is, there's 1 in 5 of these cars now being sold. I think 1 in 5 new cars being sold around the economy every single year are Motability cars. It's a massive business, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. And actually, it's 1 in 5 in England, and it goes up to almost 50% in Northern Ireland. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And the car industry will be relying on this for the sale of their new cars quite heavily.
Yeah. Is it not the case that we are now far too reliant just on benefits and on help. I mean, there's a piece on the front of the Times today in which it says that Labour's going to crack down on sick note Britain, basically, because so many people now just take time off work because they can get a sick note from a doctor without even having to see them. I mean, have we got a problem with people who just don't want to work in this country?
The fundamental issue with Motability is the fact that we have cast the net for eligibility for benefits, especially PIP, far too widely. So once upon a time, you had to have a physical disability in order to get the mobility component. Right. And back in the mid-teens, in the last decade, we managed to get to a point where parity was achieved between mental health and physical health. But instead of parity in terms of treatment and how we get people better with mental health, we simply gave them parity of welfare. And once you do that, you find yourself in a position now in 2025 when you are telling people who have anxiety, depression, dyslexia, ADHD, that they qualify for the same mobility support as somebody who is an amputee. You know, veterans, war veterans, people with multiple sclerosis, etc. So people who have a physically demonstrable condition have the same eligibility as somebody with anxiety. And that's where it's gone too far.
And that's where it's gone too far. So how do you get out of that? How do you reverse that then? You just have to be harsh on it, don't you?
Oh, so here is where I thought that Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendall and the Labour Party were going to grasp the nettle with the welfare reform. And you probably noticed, as is everybody else, that one of the first things that happened under the threat of the Labour rebellion is that PIP got taken out of the bill altogether and is now going to be subject to the Timms report. Yawn. Because, you know, by the time that report comes back, Labour will completely lose any appetite for welfare reform because they'll be facing another general election and won't want to make people who rely on these benefits angry and not vote for them.
Right. Because it's all very performative, isn't it? Like an awful lot of what Labour says, they say something and then they don't do it. They just say it.
It seems to be. You know, they set out the welfare reform bill as how it was going to really help disabled people into work. That was one of the reasons I've started, you know, my own personal campaign. That's why I wrote about the Motability scheme in The Spectator, is that I've lived with a visual impairment since I was 15. Yeah. And the barriers to work that I've experienced have been horrendous to the point that I run my own businesses. That's the only way that I can genuinely economically participate, because discrimination and bias when it comes to job interviews is a real thing. So I was really hoping that Liz Kendall was going to make some real positive steps in making sure that people with disabilities could be economically active in a really positive way. Yes. Well, that would be great. If only it could be true. Let's try and make it happen anyway. Lana, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got to run. Lana Hempsall there, Conservative Councillor for Norfolk, talking about how ridiculous the whole Motability scheme is for people who shouldn't be getting cars, people who shouldn't even be getting benefits, who are getting those benefits. Coming up, let's talk to Norman Brennan, former police officer, director of the Law and Order Foundation and founder of Knives Destroyed Lives. Another terrible murder that took place in London just a couple of days ago in Knightsbridge, of all places. A man went out for an evening meal with his partner, ended up getting stabbed to death on the streets of London because a robber wanted to take his Rolex watch. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:43. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Alex Phillips will be here then. Let's get a voice note from Gaz.
Morning, Mike. Great show, mate. Gaz from Pontefract. John Rentoul, what is he on about? You talking the country down? It's ridiculous what he's saying. It's like Keir Starmer could come in his house and in his Christmas dinner and he would still find an excuse for him. You know what I mean? These upper-class left-wingers who defend all this rubbish, because it doesn't affect them. Simple as, it does not affect them. And, you know, woe betide the day when it does, because they'll soon change the tune. Anyway, mate, great show. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you very much indeed. This is absolutely true. You know, the people who think that, you know, this is all great to talk about and to just kind of, you know, to push around the TV studio or the radio studio because it's not really going to bother anything to do with their lives. I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? You know, we've got a problem here. We're about to talk to Norman Brennan, former police officer, founder of Knives Destroy Lives. Another murder took place on the streets of London just a couple of days ago outside the Park Tower Casino, outside Salt Bay's restaurant, very close to Harvey Nichols, very close to Harrods. Knightsbridge, though, Norman Brennan, very good morning to you. Knightsbridge, I'm told, is a pretty bad place these days. We've got a young producer here who lives not far from there, who's already been chased down the street by a man with a machete, who's been mugged a couple of times and had a phone stolen. You know, Knightsbridge is one of the more dangerous parts of London these days.
It certainly is. I think in the last 9 days, there's been 5 murders in London and 14 stabbings and a few shootings that I'm aware of. It's out of control. And we keep on saying it's out of control. And when something's out of control, it becomes an emergency. And we normally deal with emergencies with some prompt action. Well, London has been now allowed to become lawless. And as you rightly say, Knightsbridge and the West End, there was, I think, £60 million worth of Rolex watches and other high-end watches were stolen last year, predominantly in London. Those that actually steal them have got places where they can sell them. You might nick a 50 grand Rolex watch, for example, and you probably got somebody ready to pay 5,000 quid for it. Right. So it becomes very lucrative. 80,000 mobile phones were stolen last year in London. 80,000. Well, Mike, what does it say about one of the greatest cities in the world where people that live here, travel through it or visit here from abroad are told, don't use your mobile phone in public, don't wear high-value watches, don't take your high-valued handbag. Now, that is not the message that London or Britain should be sending out to the rest of the world, but sadly, that's the reality. And only 2 nights ago, a 24-year-old young man, Bluey Stevens, got 2 children, was with his partner, was just enjoying a meal in the West End. He's now lying in a mortuary and probably undergoing a post-mortem as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic, isn't it? And the trouble is, only this Wednesday, I think it was, Sadiq Khan launched a new kind of crackdown, he said, on knife crime and an introduction to more neighbourhood policing. So what's that all about?
Mike, I've lived in London for 66 years. I've helped police it for 31 years. I know my onions. I've continued to help victims and talk on law and order and do my research. I know the criminal justice system and I know London inside out. London has become lawless. There are streets that are known as no-go areas. The Met will never, ever admit that, and nor will the Mayor. Well, I'm telling you as a lead law and order campaigner and someone that has policed London, that there are areas that people don't go to. Now, again, following on from what I just said there, what does it say about one of the best-known capital cities in the world, where people will travel and they will be careful where they actually travel to through fear of being a victim of crime? And how can we have no-go areas? We haven't got enough police. We're 18,000 officers short, Mike, from 2009 for the population growth. Where are they? There are no police officers that we ever see on the streets, so the public are frightened. they don't feel reassured. And when victims are victims of crime, mostly all they get is a crime number, and sometimes they've lost something that they've worked all their life to buy.
Yeah. I mean, our friend at Talk here who got mugged down in Knightsbridge, she said the police actually were great. They were really helpful. They took her to the police station. They did their best to kind of comfort her. But she said when they got to take her home, the young police officer, who was a woman, said, you know, the trouble is, even if we catch the bloke that did it, there's nothing we can really do. You know, even if we charge them, they probably won't end up anywhere near a court for a couple of years. And even if they do go to court, they probably won't get sent anywhere where they're punished.
You're absolutely spot on again, Mike, and that police officer's right, and the victim, beleaguered by crime, has sadly been left with that message. Well, we keep on hearing about crackdowns. How many times have been on your programme and many others? Over the last 30 years, I've probably done about 13,000 interviews. And the thing is that when you say that there's going to be a crackdown on a particular crime, the public think, well, that's the right result. But then in the next message, the government then tell you we've got too many people in prison, so all of the types of crimes that you have become a victim of and the public are sick and tired of and the retail industry are sick and tired of, we're not going to be sending them to prison, but we're going to crack down on crime. Soft words are no more than froth. What the public want, what the police want, is substance. And sadly, the criminal justice system fails the public, victims and the police. And the police do their best, Mike, but sadly, they just hitting their head against a brick wall. And London, and I won't swear, I'll be quite polite if I can, the politest I can be, under Mayor Khan, London has become a shithole. And when I say that in absolute desperation at what this once wonderful, lovely city was that we policed and controlled the streets of has become. And that's become under Mayor Khan. And what was his reward for 50% knife crime under his watch?
Yes, a knighthood. Yeah, I know. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. Listen, great to talk to you, Norman, as ever. Thank you very much indeed. Norman Brennan there. Apologies if anybody was a bit upset about that language, but you can understand why I used it, because I'm afraid he's right. I make him right on that. Coming up, Chris McGovern's going to talk to us, as schools are apparently banning children from playing outside. Why? Because it's too hot. Come on. This is Talk.
Making a clear jibe, Nigel Farage, how he was just talking about this, but hasn't actually really suggested anything that could work. And Keir trying to say that he's used his diplomatic, actions this week to actually get some kind of deal over the line. And we saw Nigel Farage out there this morning in the channel, and actually taking video and pictures of those migrants. And he actually came across a migrant boat that was crammed with 70 people.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. Keir Starmer has put out his lie of the day a little while ago on Twitter. By resetting our relationships across Europe, my government has made new levels of cooperation possible. For the first time, migrants arriving via small boats will be detained and returned to France, smashing the business model of people smuggling gangs. Well, except who's he detaining? They're only detaining one person out of every 17. Are they going to detain all of them and then let them all go and then just keep one? I mean, how's that going to work? He doesn't say. He doesn't say, I'm afraid. Also, I've got some really good news on Rachel Reeves, who doesn't like it when the Tories have a low growth rate of 0.1%. So we'll tell you what she wants done after that. Let's talk first of all now, though, to Chris McGovern, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. There's a story going around that basically the weather is so hot that children have been told not to play outside. Play inside instead. Well, that's all very well if you've got air conditioning, I suppose. Chris, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, you know, it's nice, isn't it, out there? It's quite pleasant weather. Put a bit of sunscreen on if you want, if you're a child, and go out and enjoy it, no?
Well, look, I taught for 35 years, and I can tell you, I think probably every teacher would tell you, the worst thing you can possibly do on a hot day is to lock up the kids in the classroom during playtime.
Yeah.
These children need a life, and you know, we can't breed a generation of wimps so that they are afraid to go out in the sun. Yeah, they can put a sun hat on, put sun cream on, they can even play in the shade, but you've got to get them out of the classroom and away from those smartphones and iPads, which they'll use if they're in the classroom and when they're on a break time. So disastrous advice, and it's a reflection of the society we live in today. We're mollycoddling these snowflake children. They need to be challenged, and they want to be challenged, Mike.
Yeah.
So, yeah, mad advice.
Also, I mean, all the schools that I've ever known have never really had particularly good ventilation or air conditioning when it's really hot. And I've often said maybe they shouldn't go to school quite so late in July when it is, generally speaking, pretty warm. So if you keep them inside and it's really hot in the classroom, that's probably worse for them, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah. And very few schools actually have air conditioning. They're far better off letting the kids have a bit of fresh air. Yeah, it does get hot in July. It gets cold in the winter, you know. We do the same there. It's too cold to go out or it's too wet to go out. These children desperately need the fresh air. They need to get outside. And they need to do something other than just sort of looking at screens and being confined in the classroom, often with mediocre teaching. And look, you know, most good teachers will tell you, kids need a break in the afternoon and in the morning. They need to get outside. We spend a lot of time these days talking about climate change. It's important, we know that. But we don't talk about mind change. And these children's minds are being changed because they are so confined into their classrooms, into their bedrooms. And Baroness Greenfield, a leading brain scientist, wrote a book called Mind Change about 10 years ago now. She said, you know, you can photograph the children's brains. They are changing. These kids need an outdoor life, desperately important. So advice which gives the opposite perspective is wrong and damaging.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But we're all kind of mollycoddled to some extent. I mean, you get on the tube now and there's a sign that says, you know, please carry water with you on hot days. It's like, well, what if I don't want to? You know, get stuffed.
Quite, and we've got to build resilience, haven't we? And self-confidence. And one of the things children lack these days, particularly in Britain and much of Europe, is this resilience to get on with the world. You know, we're competing. I've been over in India not so long ago. I watched children there in classrooms, sitting on basically on the ground, you know, incredibly well motivated. They have no problems in also playing outside, you know. We're in a competitive world. We've seen the economy shrinking today. We've got to compete with these countries which are already 2 or 3 years ahead of us in academic standards. No one ever discusses one reason why Britain seems to be going down the drain is that our poor education system is not equipping our kids to cope with the modern world. You know, we need highly educated and resilient kids, and we're not doing it. We're doing the opposite.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Chris McGovern, thank you very much indeed, Chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Back to the subject of the old Labour-run 1940-style diner, which they want to open so that people can eat cheaply for £3 a day. Derek in Newhall, Derbyshire says, Mike, love your show. For the state restaurant, you get breakfast, stale bread and dripping, lunch, tripe and onions, tea, stale bread and jam, no butter. It's too expensive. Lindsay from Preston, menu at this restaurant, codswallop and chips, clangers and cash, egg on your face and bacon, but definitely no full English. And one from Peter in Norwich, Mike, on the menu, a Starmer House special, sausages and smash. Yeah, absolutely right. One of the things that we're going to be talking about in the next hour with Chris Philp, MP, and of course David Wooding, is the state of the economy, because it turns out the UK economy has shrunk for a second month in a row, contracting by 0.1%. And according to the tweet that I've got here, which is from somebody, I've completely lost it now. It's Ruth Davidson, there we are, who's basically said, if Rachel Reeves thought a 0.1% contraction of the economy was grounds for an emergency budget for a Tory Chancellor, presumably we can expect her to bring one on to the House on Monday. Because, of course, there's always a tweet, as they say, and there's a tweet from Rachel Reeves from back in 2022 in May, when she says, new GDP figures see a dramatic drop to 0.1% in March. This adds to the worries families already face from the cost of living crisis. If the Prime Minister and the Cabinet come back from their away day in Staffordshire today with anything less than an emergency budget, they will have failed. Well, in her own words, that's what she said. And of course, who's on an away day today? The entire Labour government, somewhere at a secret location in London. They're all sitting there stroking their chins. Keir Starmer's trying to convince them all that it's all going terribly well, and we are fixing the foundations. We've now signed a deal to return all the illegal migrants to France, which isn't true. And we're going to be pressing on with everything that we can. Have we got time for a Sandra voice? No, we haven't. We'll play it later. Don't worry. There's plenty going on. David Wooding's going to be here as well, journalist and political commentator, and we'll of course take more of your ideas for the Labour-run 1940s-style diner, where you get served tripe, codswallop, and any number of ridiculous things that only the nanny state could bring you. This is Talk. We'll be back after the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people, because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and lady. Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. It is Friday, the 11th of July, I should say. Lots going on today. We've got the doctor's strike still looming. No way through that, it would seem. West Streeting saying that it is the wrong thing for them to strike after having been given effectively about a 29% pay rise last year. They should not be trying to get another one this year. It is completely untenable, completely unlikely that he will be able to offer them any money whatsoever. The impasse is coming. They're going to be going on strike on the 25th of July for 5 days, count them. Lots of you not very happy about that. Also be talking about this supposed one in, one out plan that Keir Starmer's claiming a victory on. Clearly it's not one in, one out. It's 17 in and possibly none out. I mean, that's really where we are. We're going to be talking to Chris Philp coming up, Shadow Home Secretary, about all of that. Yvette Cooper's been doing the rounds. She's not coming here, of course, because she never does. There we are. Never mind. We don't really miss her. We've got David Wooding instead. David, very good morning to you from The Sun. Of course, we're going to be talking about the migrant scenario. We're also going to be talking about Sick Note Britain. Front page of the Times says that West Streeting is going to try and get people back to work. He's going to try and tell doctors to stop giving people free sick notes just because they ask for them without even seeing one. The doctor doesn't see them. He says, we can sign you off for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe even 5 weeks. The problem in Britain is there's too many people not actually doing any work. Forget about the migrants, it's the ones who are already here as well. This is, of course, Morning Glory. Let's hear what you've been saying to us this morning.
Morning, Mike. Phil from Peterborough. An absolutely beautiful Friday morning, but I'm angry, Mike. I'm angry.
It's Adrian from East Sussex. Lovely morning here, and your show has just started. I'm sure it'll be a great one.
Morning, Mike. Joan from Norfolk.
Good morning, Mike. Just regarding Wish You Were Here, Never Here, Free Gear, Keir. 1 year, Mike. Can't believe it. In 1 year. And I tell you what, Mike, in 1 year he's done jack.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't disagree with any of that. I mean, he really has made it look like the most difficult job in the world to be Prime Minister. They're having some kind of away day today somewhere in central London where the beginnings of a reshuffle might be happening. We're not sure, but we'll bring you up to date on anything like that happens. Also, of course, we'll be telling you about the new Labour-run restaurants that they want to open. They're doing one in Nottingham, I think one up in Dundee, where they want to help people eat for just £3 a day. We've been asking you for some of your ideas about what he should be serving, and some of them are very funny. We'll keep bringing those to you over the course of time. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Ian says this from Lancashire. Morning, Mike. My wife is now bouncing around and angry for the whole day because of John Rentoul. Every time he's on, I suffer all morning. Love the show. Keep it up. Sorry about that. And Mick from Stoke-on-Trent says, for the government restaurant menu, snake and kidney pie with a complimentary drink, mug of the day for anyone believing what's being offered. Absolutely right. A quick word from David Wooding. First of all, David, good to see you.
Morning.
Could you believe how bad this government is? I mean, it's a long answer, but try and make it short.
Well, where do you want me to start?
Well,
yeah, I mean, everything. It started on day one, of course, when they made the most ridiculous political decision to axe the winter fuel allowance. And it just got worse and worse from then on.
Yeah.
And everything we don't actually know what they want to achieve.
No.
They want to manage the country. That's basically it.
But they're not managing it,
vision about what they do. No,
they're really not managing
it.
And
it seems to be one crisis to the next.
Yeah, it really does. Let's go to Chris Philp, who's down in Westminster for us, Shadow Home Secretary. Chris, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. I'm always happy to come on your show, even if Yvette Cooper is too scared to.
I'm very pleased to see you. Thank you very much indeed. It is, as David says, one crisis after another, isn't it? I mean, this nonsense this morning that we're being fed, that Keir Starmer keeps telling us that he's going to detain people who come over on the small boats. One, he hasn't explained how he's going to do that. Is he detaining everyone? Where's he putting them?
Yeah, I mean, this government clearly has no clue whatsoever. This is another gimmick. Do you remember about a year ago they were going on about how they were going to smash the gangs, and now they've gone strangely quiet on that topic because that has completely failed abjectly, and record numbers of illegal immigrants have crossed the English Channel so far this year under Keir Starmer. And yesterday's, so I've got a lunatic shouting at me, and the gimmick they announced yesterday will only see 6% of illegal immigrants returned to France, and 94% will be allowed to remain in the UK.
Right. So, I mean, once again, if it becomes difficult, by the way, just tell us and we'll come back to you. But you know, it seems nonsensical to fail to explain. He was asked deliberately yesterday, please, can you explain exactly how this is going to work? And he said, oh, I don't want to reveal that because it will give away what we're going to do. Well, surely if you're trying to deter people from coming, you want them to know that when they do come, they're going to get detained.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the point really is that he can't tell us, Yvette Cooper can't tell us the numbers involved. It's been widely reported. It's only going to be 50 a week getting sent back to France, which is only 6% of the arrivals. So the idea that letting 94% of people stay is going to be a deterrent is completely ridiculous. And he can't answer basic questions about how their scheme is going to operate. It also turns out that President Macron has to go and ask permission of the European Union before this scheme can start in the first place.
Yeah, I know, and they're likely to turn it down, aren't they?
A lot of questions.
They're likely to turn it down.
Well, that is certainly a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely right.
That's certainly a strong possibility.
Yeah, and I mean, so once again, we found ourselves in a situation where the Prime Minister is kind of, you know, gaslighting everybody and telling them that we've got a deal which is called one in, one out, when it clearly isn't one in, one out, and that we're actually going to somehow reduce the numbers of people coming here. That's because it's a deterrent. I don't think it is.
No, well, it can't be a deterrent. If it's not one in, one out, it's 16 come in and only one goes back. I mean, obviously, you know, people are going to bet on the fact they're going to be in the 16 that can stay rather than the one that goes out, so it won't have a deterrent effect. What might have a deterrent effect is if 100% or close to 100% of people trying to cross get kicked out. That might actually have a deterrent effect, but that is obviously not what's being proposed here at all.
No, exactly right. And I mean, what sort of significance or what kind of effect can you have in Parliament when you come back next week in terms of actually quizzing the Prime Minister? He's not very keen on being quizzed. He doesn't like it very much, but can you try and get a bit more out of him as to how he thinks it's going to work?
Yeah, we can try and obviously ask questions in Parliament, but I've got to be honest, we ask some questions in Parliament, whether it's the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, any of them, and they never give a straight answer to a simple question. They just avoid the question and deflect. They never give a straightforward answer to a simple question, frankly, either to us asking the questions in Parliament or indeed often to journalists asking questions as well, because again, they're just putting forward gimmicks which are not going to work, like the "we're going to smash the gangs" gimmick, which they went on about during the election and for a short time afterwards. But they've gone. If you notice, they've gone quiet about this smashing the gang stuff now because it's obviously a complete joke.
Well,
it hasn't
exactly.
worked. We've got record numbers of illegal immigrants crossing.
Well, exactly right. There's something else that is a complete joke, and this is Prime Minister's questions. Keir Starmer talking about business confidence. Have a look at this.
Business confidence at a 9-year high. That's longer than the Leader of Opposition has been in Parliament. Deloitte this week saying the UK is now the best place to invest, creating 384,000 jobs. What a contrast to the mess that we inherited from the party opposite.
Yeah, unfortunately, business confidence is not at a 9-year high. It was published yesterday that a Business Confidence Monitor, one of the largest and most comprehensive surveys of business activity, shows that business confidence in Q2 dropped to a 3-year low. It's now at minus 4.2, all right, on the index, down from minus 3 in Q1. 55% of businesses cited the tax burden as a growing challenge.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, I think Keir Starmer is living in some kind of parallel universe.
Yeah.
He and Rachel Reeves have put through the biggest tax rises in a generation that took effect in April. And we've now seen, with this morning's figures, the economy actually shrinking. That's now the second month in a row that the economy is shrinking as a consequence of the increased taxes this Labour government has put through. Unemployment has gone up in every single month of this Labour government. Unemployment is now 12% higher than it was a year ago, and people are losing their jobs. The economy is shrinking, and that's not an accident. That's not because of some global event. It is as a direct consequence of the choices Labour have made to massively increase taxes on business and on working people, and the fact that jobs are being destroyed and the economy is shrinking is a direct consequence of that. And these taxes are going up because Labour are too weak to take the decisions needed. For example, they're not controlling public sector pay. They're handing out massive pay rises all round with no conditions in return to improve performance. And now these their trade union paymasters are coming back asking for even more increases. And the Labour government is also failing to control welfare expenditure. As we saw, they couldn't even get a few simple measures past their own backbenchers a couple of weeks ago. So as a result of Keir Starmer's weakness, our taxes are going up, and they're going to go up even more in the autumn's budget. And as a result of that, jobs are being lost and our economy is shrinking. It's a catastrophic failure.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
I think it is. Chris Philp, thank you very much indeed, Shadow Home Secretary there. A catastrophic failure is how he describes this government. David Wooding's here. Hard to disagree with that, really, isn't it?
Well, yes, as he says, everything's going up. Unemployment's going up, migration's going up, taxes are going up. The only thing that's not going up is our wages, unless you're in one of the favoured union public sector branches of...
Exactly right. And this is the thing, we've spoken about this before, but, never in 100 years did you think this government would be as bad as it is. They've literally staggered from one crisis to another, as you said before. With every week that we come in and we think, what are we going to do this week? And there's always something going horribly wrong. And last week it was Rachel Reeves bursting into tears. This week it's this ridiculous kind of state visit that Emmanuel Macron had, which nobody can really understand. Nobody knows why we gave him a state visit.
No, absolutely. It just shows the cozying up to the EU countries again, because, he couldn't resist it yesterday, could he, Mike? Brexit is to blame for this. I can't think of a reason why Brexit's got anything to do with it, other than the fact that France and his EU cronies wanted to give us a punishment beating for daring to vote to leave their little political group.
And I believe there was a Mansion House speech that he gave as well, in which at the end of it he said that we should all try and get you to rejoin the European Union. And all the Remainers who were there all just sort of suddenly burst into a spontaneous applause and started cheering him. Well, because we've still got sort of this cohort of people in the sort of the powers, the corridors of power, if you like, who think we should have never left.
Yeah. Honestly, Mike, if we did that, can you imagine how many years of turmoil did we have just to get out of the EU?
I know.
Can you imagine if we tried to do the reverse?
Yeah.
It would just be another 3 or 4 years of mayhem.
Absolute mayhem. But it kind of feels like that's what we've got now. It doesn't feel as though there's any confidence in the economy. Nobody really knows whether they're going to have a job by the end of the year. People don't want to buy houses. There's a real slowdown in the housing market, from what I understand. Businesses are lacking in confidence about putting money into anything. They're sacking people, because national insurance is crippling them. The high streets are all suffering. There's no everywhere you look, there's something wrong.
Yeah, and you look at Keir Starmer and you say, what's your big plan here? Yeah. OK, you're trying to stop the boats. Not that you really believe in that, because don't forget, before he got into power barely a year ago, he was telling us we were all racists and bigots if we actually were complaining about illegal
And he was
migration.
actively getting people dragged off planes when we were trying to deport them.
Yeah.
And him and his sort of human rights lawyer mates were fighting every single step of the way that the Tories tried to deport people to Rwanda and everywhere else.
That was the first thing he did, Mike.
Yeah.
The first thing he did within hours of walking through that black door, he scrapped the Rwanda scheme, the one deterrent we had.
Right.
So as a result, the only reason he's doing this is not because he believes in it, because he knows that that's the only way to shoot the Nigel Farage fox.
Yeah.
The people who are moving over there are just exasperated with the attempts by the Conservatives. And bit of credit to them, they were stopped by lawyers, activist lawyers, and the Human Rights Act, which was brought in by Tony Blair and the ECHR. That didn't help, but in fact, they were inept at doing it. There were a lot more they could have done.
Yeah.
And now we have Labour. Their heart really isn't in it, to be honest, is it?
And you do wonder as well, don't you, after what happened with the welfare bill, if the backbenchers are going to wield this much power, whether they might step in at some point and say to him, actually, you know, this is not really what we want to be known for. And a lot of them said last week, you know, we didn't get into Labour politics in order to take money away from disabled people and take benefits away from them. They might also turn around and say, well, we didn't get into Labour politics to deport, you know, people who've come to this country seeking refuge.
Exactly. It's that's why we've seen so many screeching U-turns, because the Labour Party is doing things to try and call popularity, but deep down in its heart, it doesn't want to do these things.
Right. And so Starmer, once again, he keeps issuing these statements, doesn't he? The one today saying people will be detained if they come to this country. There's no evidence that they're going to be detained, and if they are going to be detained, I don't know where they're going to be going.
And how are they going to choose who is going back?
Exactly.
And what are his mates in the human rights legal profession going to do to stop this?
Right.
I mean, the other thing, Mike, is if you're saying that it's one in, one out, and then it works. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say it works as a deterrent.
Right.
And as a result, people say, right, we're going to stop going on the boats because we can get in through the legal route.
Right.
But then all the boats are stopped, so nobody's coming in to be sent back.
Right.
So then
what happens then?
So how do they get in? That blocks off the legal route. So they'll then go back onto the boats again.
Well,
so
they'll go back to the boats,
work.
or indeed, as we learned last week, we had a call from a long-distance lorry driver he was in Cambridge. He said, I've just pulled into a service stop, and there's a truck in front of me. 4 guys have just jumped out the back of it and run into the undergrowth. You know, because I think there's a lot more of that going on than we even know.
Well, I think the last figure I read was that 40% of asylum claims got in here via the Channel route.
Yeah.
So there are other things going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure that the lorry route has been completely closed down.
No.
It's
probably diminished.
It's diminished because of the X-ray scanners.
Right. But people are still coming that way.
Yeah.
But by the same token, people are coming legally because, you know, the lefties always used to say, oh, but there are no legal routes, make more legal routes. There's plenty of people coming in on work visas and student visas who then overstay and then claim asylum.
Well, yeah, in the old days, when asylum was for people who were locked up and tortured in China or trying to leap over the Berlin Wall, they used to come here as athletes, if you remember.
That's right.
And then they'd come to take part in some sporting event.
I remember
and then
that.
claim asylum.
I used to work in this Hungarian bakery in North London, in Hampstead, right? And I remember coming in one Saturday to work, and there was 3 new guys. I said, who were they? And they were the Romanian rowing team who had all decided to defect and wanted to claim asylum. And they'd ended up working in this place because it was sort of, you know, it was a magnet for people from Eastern Europe. You know, and that used to happen all the time.
Yeah, and they were happy to come and live here, and they weren't
work.
Yeah, and work. But I mean, and there weren't the same numbers of them. There was no other route in.
No. Let's talk just before I let you go about, you know, this away day, right? Nobody knows exactly what they're doing. It's supposed to be a reset. He loves a reset, doesn't he, Starmer? Loves that word. But the word on the street is that, you know, this will be the preempting of a kind of reshuffle to come sometime in the summer over the course of, you know, the next few weeks. I think Parliament shuts down, in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah.
They then go and think about it. I mean, I know that he's going to try and hang on to Rachel Reeves for as long as he can, but what do you think is going to be the outcome, say, come the sort of the end of the summer? Will he still be hanging in there? Will he still be relying on all the same people? Will he be trying to move people around?
He's got to, but the problem is these refreshes, all you do is you store up problems on the back benches, because you sack somebody, they go on the back bench and get people around them who are unhappy, and they become a focal point for dissent. So he'll be trying to avoid that. But there are all these different factions. You've got Wes Streeting, who sees himself as a sort of Blairite, and then you've got the left, who are all behind Angela Rayner. So you've got these different factions who's got to try and he's got to tiptoe through this very carefully. As for Rachel Reeves, I mean, he has said that Rachel is there till the end of this government. Now, we'll wait and see. There's 4 years for him to change his mind on that, and events can happen. But he would be crazy to do it now. And he is inextricably linked. He is arm in arm with Rachel.
Well, he's in lockstep.
They came in as a dream ticket. So I can't see how he can get rid of it just yet. Well, a scream ticket, more like it.
Yeah, absolutely awful, dreadful. I can't believe how bad it is. Every day I say to Christian, I said, well, we just fall about laughing. You're just kind of going, what else can go wrong?
Keeps us all in work, Mike.
Yeah, well, it does. Yeah, thank God for that. Yeah, because we're going to need the money soon because they're going to be taking more of it off us. But there we are. David Woody, good to see you. From The Sun, journalist, political commentator, former editor of the Daily Express, of course, and many, many other things. It's 21 minutes past 9. Coming up, Robert Bates, research director at the Centre for Migration Control. What's going on? We're out of control. This is Talk.
Individual clinicians working incredibly hard are stressed out, burnt out. That is true. Is the system as a whole using the commitment of the people who work for it in an efficient way? Absolutely not. And the people who are the expert witnesses on that are the clinicians themselves, who feel that their time isn't being used properly. And therefore, it's a leadership and a management issue.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It's just about another half an hour to go for Alex Phillips. Starmer has lied again, says David in Manchester. If you come from France, you will be detained and returned. That's what he said. But it is only 1 in 17, and you're going to be detained in a hotel. Margaret in Birmingham says Starmer and Macron, yet another EU loving. 700 across the channel, but they were so busy hugging and holding hands, they never noticed. It's weird. 800 million quid to Macron, and we get nothing for our money. It does seem absolutely utterly bizarre, doesn't it? Kenny from Edinburgh says, please can you tell Charlie Rowley to get his backside to Downing Street and get some much-needed common sense into government in the UK. He talks clearly, doesn't do word salads, and calls a spade. I'd vote for him. Imagine it, a politician that is honest. It will never catch on. Yeah, and Karen in Taunton. Morning, Mike. Groundbreaking migrant deal. It doesn't even create a splash in a puddle. I think that's right. Let us seek the guidance of Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Robert, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. I mean, incredible series of stories in the papers this morning. A migrant deal as hundreds get to Britain. Is it what it says? Jack Olson's piece on the front page of The Sun. We've got Macron saying Brexit lies are to blame for the crisis. But the Mail, I think, probably sets it up best when it says, what a joke. Keir Starmer's big plan to solve the Channel crisis was already threatening to unravel last night. And I don't understand quite why some sections of the media, particularly on ITV and Sky and the BBC, are calling it a one-in, one-out deal. It's not, is it?
No, it's far from it. I think in reality what this deal would actually encompass is roughly 1.5% of those individuals that have actually come over the Channel since the crisis started. I think best case scenario, what this scheme, this groundbreaking scheme as some people are choosing to herald it, would actually accomplish is nothing. That's best case scenario, and we'd still continue to see tens of thousands of individuals coming across the channel on boats, because of course, why wouldn't they? The best case scenario for them is that they get given asylum in the UK. Worst case scenario is to get returned to France and can have another go. But I think what will likely, more than likely happen actually, is that we will see more individuals with asylum claims that have been approved by France being put upon the British taxpayers' shoulders to sort of support and integrate, and the pressures there will continue to mount, and we will continue to see the numbers increase. And then the real risk is that we continue to get dragged into this European cooperation, which is an absolute disaster for this country, because we know from the Dublin regulations, when we were in the EU, we ended up taking far more illegal migrants from Europe than we were able to return in the first place. Right. So best case scenario, it does nothing. Worst case is it actually leads to a worsening of the crisis.
But this is the problem, isn't it? I mean, are they starting to detain people today? I mean, it's no, you know, we're going to play a little clip here of Starmer being asked yesterday what the details would be of how it would all work. Let's see what he had to say.
It will be operationalised in coming weeks, so that is a good thing. It is, of course, a pilot. It is there to prove the concept that if you come over by small boats, then you will be returned to France. Of course, being a pilot, it is very important that it works, and we need to make sure that it does work. And if it works, what it does is break the model, and that's the only way in the end to stop this vile trade. And so that's why this is a real breakthrough moment today. As I say, many governments have tried to get this far and have failed to do so. In terms of those that will be returned, I'm not going to go into the details of that, because that has the potential to undermine how this will operate.
Yeah, so he doesn't tell us how he's going to detain them. And as somebody says here, Taff in Dover, the Prime Minister said anyone crossing by small boat will be detained and sent back. Where are you going to detain between 400 and 800 people per day? Delusional at best, a blatant lie at worst. Because, you know, we know Manston is already under the cosh. I mean, Manston can't take any more people. I don't understand how it's going to happen.
No, we don't have the capacity. We simply don't have the capacity, which is why we've had these males being scattered around communities and in hotels. So we know as well that many individuals, once they are in these hotels, simply disappear. Tens of thousands have simply slipped the Home Office's purview in recent years. So the idea that they'd be able to keep a proper eye on them is laughable. It's interesting, Starmer mentioned the concept of the sort of threat of arriving in this country illegally would mean that you had the risk of being returned. Well, we had that with Rwanda, and I would argue that would be far more effective a deterrent than this French scheme, because what Rwanda would actually mean is these individuals were sent thousands of miles away and they would never have a chance to actually set up shop in Britain. Unfortunately, this French deal, best case scenario is we move them 10 miles away over the other side of the English Channel, and then they can just have another go. It's absolutely ridiculous that the Labour Party trying to claim this as some kind of big win, and whilst doing so, allowing Macron to absolutely degrade and denigrate our country in the manner that he did so appallingly yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, nobody can explain, certainly that I've spoken to, why we had to give him some kind of state visit anyway. You know, we don't owe the French anything. We don't really need the French to do anything for us, because they don't anyway. And as we say, this whole deal, which is not really in the hands of the French anyway, is likely to be voted down and kicked out of the room by the EU anyway.
Well, exactly, and that is the risk. We saw those countries in Eastern and Southern Europe kicking up a bit of a stink about the prospect of this deal. And I wonder whether that's some form of early negotiating tactic as well, to sort of try and put the pressure on Keir Starmer to make him realise that if he wanted to actually have any form of returns agreement with European countries, then he would need to negotiate with the European bloc. And yeah, we've seen time and time again over the last few years, when British officials go and try and negotiate with the EU, they get absolutely walked over because they're too sycophantic and slavish to the Brussels machinery. So I really hope that this falls very quickly down. It disintegrates. People realise what absolute folly it is, and it's kind of put on the scrap heap as quickly as possible, because frankly the situation last week was at least better than what we are probably going to be heading towards with this French deal. Yeah, but I mean, I suppose the problem with that is then we're just back to square one, with loads and loads of people coming over on these boats, you know, in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds every single day, particularly during the summer months, and then we'll end up with another 25,000 people here by the end of the year. No, you are right. I mean, none of this is ideal. This is far from ideal, but we are so far away from having the conversation that we need to have about deporting the 1.2 million illegal migrants that are in this country, and actually addressing those pull factors that are causing such large numbers to come to the UK, that I think anything that sort of takes us further away from having to have those frank and honest conversations, which politicians have been too eager to avoid, and instead tries to kind of cop out and cover and gerrymander the figures a little bit, which this scheme actually does, puts us in a worse situation, because this won't bring the numbers down. The taxpayers' bill, the societal and cultural change that will result from this scheme is exactly the same as it is right now. It's just that we're further away from having that reckoning that does need to happen about how we actually solve this crisis.
Right. And he said nothing as well about what we do with the people that are already here. You know, we already know, for example, that there's something like, I think it's 100,000 people waiting for their appeals to go through because they've already been turned down as asylum seekers, and their asylum claims have been dismissed. But because they're appealing, they're allowed to stay here in a hotel for another year.
Yeah, and it's not just those that are appealing as well, of course. It's those that have actually been rejected that are still clogging up hotels and being given millions of pounds every single year to still subsist in this country as well. So there's a huge backlog here, and this scheme won't really go near those, I don't think, that existing backlog. Instead, it will just address those future flows. And unfortunately, you know, as I said, we need to have that really frank conversation about we need to enter deals with those third countries, those countries of origin, where these individuals have come from, and get them sent back there. We need to have a deal with a third country such as Rwanda. We need to massively upscale our detention facilities. None of that will happen if the Labour Party start to think that this is a silver bullet, and that going forward this is going to be the answer to all the problems.
No, exactly right. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Robert Bates there, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. His view is that it'd be better off actually if we abandon this new supposed one-in, one-out deal because it's going to be a complete and utter failure. It's going to be a complete disaster, and you're actually going to end up with more people coming in than you're ever going to send back. So it's not really solving the problem. He says it'd be better to go back to where we were before any of this happened. But let's ask that question. Is he going to start detaining people in the Channel today? Is it going to happen? Have they had a different kind of instruction at Border Force? Have the RNLI been told to stop bringing people in? Have they been told to wait for Border Force to arrest them and take them somewhere and keep them there? Nobody really knows because the state of this Labour government is such that nobody can understand what it is that they're doing. Even they don't seem to know. Let's get a voice note from Sandra.
Hi, Mike. It's Sandra from Essex. If Mr Rentoul is right about Labour inheriting an appalling financial state of affairs, then why on earth has this government given away so much money rather than keeping it, giving it away to on appalling deals and for reparations when it should have been spending that money on the people of this country? Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Sandra. Thanks very much indeed. Starmer couldn't stop a boat even if they were floating in his bath, says Tracy in Chingford. Yeah, I think so. And Brits will be served spam and chips in state restaurants for £3, and illegal immigrants will be getting their three-course meals in their hotel restaurants, says Stuart. Yeah, exactly right. And Jenny says, there is no timeline on how long the pilot will last. Yes, up to 50 a week, but if it only runs for a couple of months, we could end up giving France back 100, but get 100 vetted asylum seekers with their families and extended families in tow. Well, this is the thing, which nobody voted for. Nobody said that would be right for this country to suddenly have a load of people coming here legally, a load of people coming here because their asylum claims were going to be allowed, and suddenly moving in on us. Doesn't make any sense. We are, of course, at Gaff-prone Friday, so it's 9:34. Let's get another one from Julie Hartley-Brewer.
You said you could raise another £10 billion a year for the Treasury by a 2%... Apologies. Trying not to sneeze while I'm joking, sorry. A 2% tax on their assets. Trying not to sneeze while I'm joking. Apologies.
Goodness me. Poor Julia. It feels like we're picking on her a bit this week. Never mind. We'll have some more for you before the end of the hour. I'm sure there must be one by Kevin O'Sullivan. Surely. 9:35.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Jack says this, Mike, the menu for Keir's state-run restaurant will just be Brussels. Yeah, I guess so. One from somebody who doesn't give a name, unfortunately. I'm no economist, in fact, I'm far from it, but in light of the fact that the economy has shrunk for a second month in a row, with factors being blamed on slow retail and manufacturing, then doesn't it stand to reason that with the increased taxes on businesses, then prices go up, especially in things like retail and hospitality? If that happens, then costs are passed on to the consumer then stops buying as much, so in turn there is less demand for manufacturing due to slow sales. So this slowdown in the economy can be directly linked to the increase in business taxes. Absolutely it can. There's no question in my mind or anybody else's mind that the reason why the economy is lagging so far behind is because there simply isn't any energy in the whole thing. You know, people aren't spending money, people haven't got the money to spend, people are not risking business ventures because they don't know what taxes are going to come down the pike. I mean, we don't know yet, for example, what Rachel Reeves is going to do in the autumn. Having said that she would never put more taxes on, they're now saying they will. So for heaven's sake, which is the answer likely to be? Let's talk now, though, to Rebecca Wright, campaign director for Defund the BBC, because it turns out that Greg Wallace, despite the fact that he says he's now going to war with the BBC, has basically been banned from ever working there again after the corporation ruled he was not safe to have in the workplace. Another one. I mean, there's so many of these characters. Rebecca, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Sounds like a pretty dangerous place to work, doesn't it, old BBC? You never know when some guy's going to come running out of a dressing room at you with no clothes on and a sock carefully placed over his member.
I mean, this is the thing. It's really confusing about this story. Is he a cheeky greengrocer or is he this rampant sex pest? And if he's a rampant sex pest, why has he been allowed to stay at the, working for the BBC for 17 plus years? They're coming out with a sort of high and mighty attitude where he's got this learned behaviour which then can't be unlearned, which doesn't make any sense to me. But if that's the case, that he's done all of these awful things, and we'll see when their sort of investigation comes out one way or the other, why have they allowed him to carry on? Because these have been made early on in his career with them.
Right, because Claire Powell, who's head of compliance apparently, says that they wrote to him in 2019, basically, to say that his behaviour was not conducive to a good working atmosphere and his conduct was not acceptable. And yet he carried on. It says the BBC will not tolerate behaviour to occur on any production that is inappropriate, unprofessional and or has the effect on individuals to feel sexually harassed. But, that was 5-6 years ago.
Absolutely, and the most severe allegation that's been reported on is this member of staff who he apparently pulled his trousers down in front of, and as we know, he doesn't wear any underwear, so she got an eyeful. But that was back in the early 2010s. She worked there between 2011 and 2013.
Right. Well, that seems to be a very long time ago, and I mean, you can have, not much sympathy with him, but some sympathy, given that he did that and he wasn't fired.
Exactly, and so he thought it was okay to carry on. So maybe it's that the BBC has changed their policy now, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is that he's been there all of this time. He's been doing this behaviour. He thinks that he was a cheeky chappy greengrocer, and that's part of his persona and what he was hired for. And obviously, as you say, he was allowed to carry on. And now suddenly the BBC is taking this moral high ground. Well, they should have. If he was doing those awful things, then they should have been cutting that out straight away.
Well, exactly right. I mean, certainly there seems to be an outside production company involved as well, doesn't there, where they were also told by several women that he was a nuisance and that he had pestered them and that he sexually harassed them and all that, and they all kind of dismissed it and just went, well, he is who he is, don't worry about it, calm down.
Yeah, exactly. They said to the woman who he pulled his trousers down, allegedly pulled his trousers down in front of, that you're not being Jimmy Savile, you're not under 16, and so the BBC really needs to look at these sort of outside production companies that they're using if they want to take this moral high ground, and if we're being forced to pay for the BBC and they're going to have this position, which they should do if these allegations are correct, then they need to be managing these outside production companies effectively.
Yeah. Well, they really do, because, I mean, I know it's not BBC related, it's ITV related, but on the front page of The Sun today, we've got Gino De Campo set to start a new life down under in Australia, because he's more or less been told, you know, there's not going to be much for you here. Job offers are going to be few and far between. Because one of the things I remember that sort of showed up the hypocrisy of ITV was that I think there was an episode of This Morning, at least one, where Gino De Campo was cooking naked. And you could clearly see his backside in a still that certainly I saw, and Holly and Phil were sort of standing off to the side laughing and guffawing around, and you're thinking to yourself, well, it's not a great idea to have naked people cooking on a television show, is it?
I mean, it just shows how times have changed, doesn't it? I mean, people find that funny, you know, quirky little guy naked cooking, you know, that used to be amusing. Right. But it crosses the line, and it's the BBC and, you know, like you say, the ITV there are kind of confused as to where that line is drawn. And it seems now that they're drawing the line much further down than they used to. And these presenters are seen kind of being thrown out as these kind of, you know, they're the bad ones. Right. And it may be that some of these, you know, we've seen with the BBC before with Jimmy Savile and the likes, that, you know, there are some awful rotten eggs there. But at the same time, the BBC has to deal with these things quickly. It can't let someone carrying on their behaviour for 17 years. If in a normal business, you know, you get 3 written warnings and then you're out. Right. You know, verbal warning, 2 written warnings, and then you're out. The BBC has to have a similar approach, and it can't just sort of throw people under the bus and say you're evil when it's them who are responsible.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's been so many cases like that, hasn't there? I mean, going all the way back to the Russell Brand situation as well, where, you know, they knew what was going on, and then it was only latterly that they kind of went, oh my goodness me, wasn't that terrible? But it now looks as though they're going to get it wrong again, though, because Greg Wallace apparently is going to sue them for discrimination.
Well, this is, it's a very interesting thing, isn't it? His position that he's taking on this sort of autism that he had, you know, or that he's now been diagnosed with. So that will be interesting to see how that all plays out. Yeah. He apparently had conversations with them about thinking that maybe he was autistic and that was his behaviour. And if that was the case, and he did raise that with them, that still doesn't excuse, you know, stripping off in front of people or groping people if those allegations are true. So clearly the BBC have completely mishandled it. Yeah. So yeah, let's watch with our popcorn.
We just wait for the next sort of staggeringly bad judgment from the BBC, because it just goes from bad to almost as bad as the government at this point. Thanks very much indeed, Rebecca Rhino, campaign director of Defund the BBC. The BBC just can't seem to get anything right. You know, they are exactly like the government. Let's get a voice note from Matt on John Rentoul.
Morning, Mike. It's Matt from Kent. I'm just listening to Mental Rental on your interview this morning. Is he coming to you from his local Wetherspoons? Because he's clearly drinking something. So he said that the French aren't violating British waters by bringing the migrants to the edge of our waters and then floating them in. So by his logic, if I empty all the bins from my house over my neighbour's fence, am I not violating their property? I'm confused.
Yeah, it would seem so, Matt. I don't think you're confused at all. There's no reason why. I think John Rentoul's confused, because when I pointed out to him that if we went into the French waters as they came into our waters, it wouldn't be any different. Except he thought at the beginning that it was going to be some kind of declaration of war. And I went, no, it's not really, is it? And then he went, yeah, you're quite right, it's not really, no. I thought he was all right this week, actually, but he just doesn't make the arguments, does he? I mean, we've had 3 great arguments this week, one with the lawyer, one with the doctor, and one with John Rentoul. Basically, it's what we live for. It's 9:45.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through to 10, another 10 minutes or so. Defence and nuclear collaboration with France being lost in the headlines, says Howard in Suffolk. Yeah, there was a story that we did mention yesterday in which it said that basically we've come to some arrangement with the French on the nuclear weapon deterrent scenario, which apparently, well, that might deter them from coming across the channel, mightn't it? But apparently we've signed some deal in which it says that, we will not act unilaterally, we'll only act in combination with France, and they will only act in combination with us. It's kind of not really worth the paper it's written on. It doesn't really mean anything. John says, why didn't Labour treat Rwanda as a pilot scheme? I'll tell you why. Because it was a Tory scheme. Small-mindedness by inadequate ministers. And these government restaurants should serve the same food that is sold to the armed forces. Then the country can see just how badly they're treated, says Vicky. Actually, the armed forces food that I've ever had has always been really good. I stayed very near a camp in Bosnia during the Bosnian War, and the army food was fantastic, actually, I have to say. I have no complaints at all. Let's get ready for what's coming up later on tonight. 7 o'clock tonight, Plank of the Week, and it's a good one. Have a look at this.
She's going to censor workplace banter. Now, you be good on this, right? Because she's going to put diversity officers into workplaces to ensure that people don't say and do things that are offensive. Now, we are old enough, you are not, you've already told me I'm 60, you're 25, we are old enough to banter was OK. Now I'm too scared to fart. Now if I don't know whether there's...
Well, there's a couple of
That's not why you're scared. There's a couple of reasons. That's patently because I'll probably follow through there.
Yeah.
But in all essence, I don't know whether to open the door for a woman, I don't know to let her out of a lift, I can't go, all right, sweetheart, nobody can tell a joke about anything anymore, help me out.
You do have to let them out of a lift if they want to leave, honestly.
I'm not Boy George, am I? Allegedly,
Yeah, well, he says he's frightened of what to say, but he wasn't so frightened of what to say when he was doing his show this week. Have a look.
I have to hold you there. David, because President Emmanuel Macron is about to address Parliament. Before he does that, I've got something to say to you, Emmanuel.
Bonjour, Monsieur Macron, je veux récupérer mes 700 millions.
Hello, Mr. Macron. I want my 771 million quid back. I don't want to listen to your state visit speech. Shall I tell you again what I want, Macron?
Macron.
Oh, he's gone. It was there. No, cut him off. Go to the ad break. Not interested. Excuse me, hold on a second. Listen, Macron, I'm not interested in what you're saying. I want my money back. Do you want me to put it into French? I will.
Bonjour, Monsieur Macron, je veux récupérer mes 700 millions.
Just give me my money back. I've 10 prisons to build. I've got right problems in this country. I'm not interested in your wife's 100 years older than you. Don't start telling me how to... Don't even... Listen, I'll say it one more time, you French. Do it.
Bonjour, Monsieur Macron, je veux récupérer mes 700 millions.
Right, that's it. A very good afternoon to Peter Blakeslee. Can you speak French?
Bonjour.
Comment ça va?
That's the extent of my French.
Ça va bien, et tout, mon ami? You're proper Del Boy, aren't you, from Only Fools and Horses? I'd like a bonjour.
That's always the end of the conversation, isn't it? Ça va? Comment allez-vous? And then everybody goes, that's all I know. Thanks very much. Now, we were speaking earlier about John Rentoul, and of course, we spoke to him a little bit earlier on in the show. Here he was trying to defend Keir Starmer's brilliant new plan, one in, one out.
there is an agreement between the UK and France. So that's a substantive bit of progress.
Well, not really.
If it goes ahead, it will be more than the Conservatives achieved, and it'll be more than Reform could ever hope to do.
I don't know why you keep mentioning Reform. Reform are not in power, right? They haven't had a chance to do anything yet, so you don't know what they can do. You might say, maybe hang on, you're saying if it works, it's great, but you're saying that Reform couldn't make anything work without actually knowing what they might do.
Yes, I do. I mean, I know what Reform's policy is, and the reason I take Reform seriously is because they're in the lead in the
I'm not saying you shouldn't take them seriously, but you can't criticise them for something they haven't done.
I can criticise their policies as announced, and their policy on small boats, as far as I can make out, is to take migrants back to France and drop them off on the beaches, violating
to turn the boats around,
French waters. Yeah, violating French waters, and in effect going to war with France. I just don't think
really. Well, you might as well say that France have been going to war with us then, because they've been violating British waters, haven't they?
No, they haven't. But,
well, they have, because they escort the boats into British waters, and then the British border force takes over and brings the boats into to dock in Dover.
Yeah, I agree. So
it's not really going to war, is it?
Well, it would be going to war if British boats went into French waters and dropped these
how is it not doing the same thing if the French are dropping them in British waters then?
Because they don't go into British waters.
Yes, they do.
They escort them to the halfway line.
They escort them into... Well, the halfway line is where British waters begin.
As soon as they've crossed the halfway line, they're our responsibility. I agree that the situation...
Yeah, because they're in British waters.
Yes, but the French don't go into the British waters.
Yeah, they do. They escort the boats into British waters. That's what happens, and that's why it's so ridiculous, because the boats are not actually ever on their own. They're never taking the dangerous crossing. Occasionally things go wrong and people drown. Yeah. But at the end of the day, most of the time, they're escorted by French patrol boats into British waters, and then they're picked up by border force, and then they're brought to Britain.
I wasn't
That's
aware
how it happens.
That the French boats actually go into British waters.
They do.
If they do, we should
declare war on them.
We should take them to the International Court.
Nobody understands yet how, if it's because it's basically 17 in and 1 out, right? Nobody knows how they're going to pick the one that goes out. Nobody understands who any of these people are. Nobody knows.
But that's why it's worth doing a pilot scheme, isn't it, to try and work out all these.
Well, no, because if you want to do a pilot scheme, why not do what Greece are doing, which is far more sensible, make a detention centre a place where they are taken to and then deported. That's surely a far better and more workable solution.
Well, yeah, building huge detention centres all over the south of England is not, that would be quite expensive. And the difficulty.
Well, I mean, I think we can forget about how expensive it is.
The deportations, isn't it? I mean, that's the difficult bit, and that's why this is important, because this actually gets a returns agreement with France.
Yeah, but we're returning.
We can actually deport some of them back to France, and now that is progress. And
but John, you said it yourself. It's only progress if it works, and it won't work because the EU is probably going to block it. Yep. The EU probably is going to block it, so there'll be much ado about nothing at the end of the day. So there we have it. People are moaning about the weather, by the way. We've got Alex Phillips coming up in a minute. I'll ask her about it. Let's get a voice note first from John.
Morning, Mike. It's Johnny from West Yorkshire. I think next time Macron comes over here, I think the only thing we should be giving him, really, is a Mike Graham bumper sticker. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Yeah. Can we get one in French? I wonder what common sense is in French. I'm sure somebody can tell me. But, of course, the bumper stickers have all run out. We're going to try and get some more. I'm not allowed to say that anymore because, they get a bit worked up in the old back end of the back office department. But, yeah, it was brilliant. I think I'm hoping most people who wanted to get one have now got one. And maybe we'll do some more coming in another time. But everything's going on about the heat wave, right? We're getting warnings now about going to Wimbledon. People were passing out yesterday. I'm going to go at the weekend. Hopefully it won't be too hot. There's people warning about Oasis. It's going to be very hot at Oasis. Kevin O'Sullivan just messaged me. He says it's very hot on the tube. I've got this from Mark Leyland, who says, I was lucky enough to go visit my son in Perth, Australia. I did one of my bucket list experience watching a game of cricket at the Wacker. It was 39 degrees, and at lunch, the batting team were doing bleep test training on the outfield. Too hot, my backside. Well, exactly right. I mean, I was in Dubai, it was like 45 or something like that. Just went to lunch. It's what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alex Phillips is here. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Is it nice out there?
Oh, it's lovely. But I think this is it. It's peaking today, isn't it?
I think it's cooler tomorrow.
No.
Yeah, but
really
not that bad. I mean, it's going to be 28 tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
fine.
So
it's going to kind of go down to 28, 26, and then back up again on Monday, I think.
I'm loving it. Can we all just acknowledge what an amazing summer we're having?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
All the ne'er-do-wells moaning about, oh, climate change, oh, the driest spring on record, on reservoirs this and hosepipe bans. It wouldn't be a British summer without a hosepipe ban.
Of course it wouldn't. I mean, there's already one going on somewhere, like West Yorkshire, I think. But yeah, I mean, apparently this is the nicest summer we've had since 2020, which was, of course, the COVID summer, where all of those lovely middle-class people were very happy to go home and not go anywhere because they had lovely gardens to go and sit in. And those of us who had one-bedroom flats in London weren't quite so well off. No. You know, I remember used to go out and find all these people walking down my street because it was by the river. And I was quite outraged. I was like, all these people walking down my street, it's like a private road. What are you doing? It's not a public thoroughfare. Yeah. All these people just walking all the time. Ridiculous.
How dare they?
Anyway, what I do when it's really, really hot is just get in the car and put the air conditioning on.
What, you just sit in your car?
Yeah.
With air conditioning?
Yeah. If it's really, really hot, yeah.
I just go. I love it.
Climate change.
I love sunshine. I'm not one of these people who moans about it being too hot. I just love the sun. I hate winter. I can't be dealing with that. And I just know hot all the way, and I'm there in the garden.
Right.
Because you know, doing nothing in sunshine is an activity. Do you know what I mean?
It is an activity.
Like in the winter, you can't just sit and do nothing. But if a bit of sunshine, you can sit in the garden, and that's like a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing. And you have to get up occasionally and get yourself another glass of Pimm's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cider,
in your case.
Yeah.
You were at the Grand Prix last week, weren't you?
Not the actual, I was at qualifying.
Oh, at qualifying.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I saw some nice pictures.
Yeah.